Well, welcome everybody. My name is Gina Lazenby. I'm the chair of the Feng Shui Society, and welcome to our Feng Shui Skills Development Day. Just let me spotlight myself. Yep, here I am. And welcome. This is the second event that we've had like this. Last year's was very successful, and people join us live as you have done now, or watch it as a recording. And the idea is a kind of a halfway house between a webinar with a single piece of information and a live conference, which obviously during the time of the last couple of years, all live events changed, and some people may love to meet in person, but a lot of people love the idea of sitting at home and connecting with others around the world on subjects they enjoy. And here we are today with the Feng Shui Society for our, I think probably, 4 or 5 hour session today. So welcome. We've got quite a few sessions, and we've got a nice subject to tackle in our breakout rooms. But what I'm doing in my welcome to you is just going to talk briefly about the Feng Shui Society and our celebration of 30 years this year. This November will be the 30th anniversary of the start of the Feng Shui Society. Started from a group of people where we all met originally at the Community Health Foundation. Some of you may have a long memory and recall that place in Old Street, the East West Centre. And William Spear was a teacher. He used to come over from America and was teaching, I think he called it the transforming power of intuitive Feng Shui. And there were a lot of people in the room. And I think in the November of '93, I think we've been having a couple of trainings with him over the year. It was either a year or a couple of months. My memory is 30 years is a long time. But I was working with Bill, and there was such a passion for the subject, for deepening our wisdom, expanding our sense of self, and Feng Shui for the group that came together was a vehicle for that, understanding more about ourselves and about the space around us, wanting to expand our knowledge, but do so in community. So we created the Feng Shui Society. I served as the first chair. And our hexagram that we grew through was 42 when we sat. I think it was at my dining table in either my office or at my home, and 42. And I'm just going to read a short interpretation of 42. It's called increase. So in a time of general increase, those who contribute most directly to the common good will achieve the greatest and most long-lasting rewards. When opportunities for increase arise, very good fortune comes to those who act swiftly and boldly without falling into the trap of letting their actions be merely self-serving. So really, that started us out on a journey of contribution and service. And a lot of people have given their time and energy to the Feng Shui Society. Yan Cisek being one who was there at that original table, and it's still with us now. People have been in and out of the society and served it, or it's helped them set up their practice from the word go. I think it's been part of many people's journeys, even though they might not be a current member. And here we are, still 30 years on, and taking the opportunity to review and understand and think about what might be needed in the future. At the time, very few people knew what Feng Shui was. It was very difficult to find books. Bill Spear, Feng Shui Made Easy was one of the first key books. Prior to that, Sarah Rosbach, I think she was called, had her American book, Black Hat Tradition. And I myself was trying to find a Feng Shui consultant in something like 91 or 92. Found a newspaper cutting with Derek Walter's name mentioned in there. And I did find someone, I don't now remember his name, but I had to book an appointment with him before he went to China for 6 months to study. So expertise was thin on the ground. And after my first year at Feng Shui Society, I created the Feng Shui Network, an international organization bringing teachers from all over the world. And that was a great way for me to learn, bringing them into the school. And for several years, we created a professional training program. And that's in those early days, it was about finding out what there was to learn, because anybody who had the knowledge had grown it and then become a Feng Shui practitioner, like William Spear's study came out of the macrobiotic movement and his study of energies. Other people like Richard Craigmore came from his work as an acupuncturist and realizing that what he did on people's bodies was change when they went back to their home, and then started his field of earth acupuncture. So people came to this conversation, this discipline, this art from many different ways, but we came together in community. And that's what the Feng Shui Society has been able to do all these years, provide this container for the development of professional skills. And develop a professionalism in a subject which was unfamiliar to people. I think people have an inner sense of knowing when it's explained to them, but in those days when you said Feng Shui, people didn't know what it was. I really, my own business, having a Feng Shui, having a PR agency, really was just able to put the word out from my own passion of the subject. And that's really how we had that explosion of publicity in the 90s, because putting it out there into a very receptive audience. There was a hunger for this, and so things came together in great timing. I can remember putting out some publicity about the personal development center that I had also started, and one of the courses in there was Feng Shui, and we put some publicity out, and then an article came out in the Daily Mail about Feng Shui. Our phone number was in there. This is I think this is pre-internet, no emails. And we got 900 phone calls in 1 week. And it really just showed that if people were hungry for change, hungry for something, they couldn't necessarily articulate what it was. And in those early conversations, if I can move my furniture and change my life, that's great. I'm not quite ready for deep change, but obviously there's a deeper story than just rearranging the furniture. And anybody who's been on a Feng Shui journey as a study of passion and interest, or to become a practitioner, will know that your own life changes, as you expand increase your own sense of self and your sense of space, your life changes. And that might be an interesting thing for you to reflect on yourself today. We can ask in a minute who is a practitioner, who's a student, and who is here as an enthusiastic receiver of knowledge. But yes, Feng Shui has been on an interesting journey in helping people. And now it's a commonplace word. People do understand what it is. And we've been here of service, and we still are. So conversations to be had about how we're moving to the future, but we will be celebrating our 30 years in November. And we're not clear on what actual day we'll do that, but we're going to do something live in London, and it will be a celebration event. So we'll let you know about that. And so those of you who are able to travel to London can take part. Otherwise, we'll perhaps create another event online as a celebration. But here we are today. I've given my introduction to the background of the society, maybe, I'm looking here, maybe there are some people here who were around in the early days. I mentioned Jan, Simon Brown, John Sandifer were around, Karen Kingston, Gay Anand was here. Christine, you joined us, you were a teacher, weren't you, in the Feng Shui network, as was Jan, as was Denise Lynn was around. She did actually teach us teach for me as well. She was a big name at the Mind, Body, Spirit at the time. So yes, looking back at yesterday, maybe you want to put your own reflections in there. But we're coming up to the start now. I'm going to ask actually I'm going to put it so that I can see everybody. And maybe you give us a hand if you are actually a professional Feng Shui practitioner currently, that you are a practitioner now. And then I'll ask if anybody here is a student. Anybody here? A couple, yes. Oh yeah, all right, then if you're not got your screen on, put your thumb. Joy, Jody, Dorina, Sophie, quite a few of you. And are the rest of you, are any of you students, or are you just passionate about the subject? So put your hand up if you are actually studying. Or a thumb, yeah. We're always studying, aren't we? Really? I mean, this is it. We gather, we learn together. This is the beauty of having an organization like this, that we can share. Or, you know, if you take that view that you're always learning something, even when you've sat in the program before. I remember William Spear teaching his Transforming Power of Intuitive Feng Shui. I sat through it 13 times because I hosted 11 of them. And I always learned something new, you know, every time you sit and do something from the beginning. So beginner's mind is what we're going to have today. Has somebody asking a question? Enabled closed captioning? Who can see? I don't know what that means about closed captioning and whatever. So I'm going to go back to my view. So don't know if anybody wants a first influence. Oh, first influence, Karen Kingston, her book, which is still available. Indeed, it is. Yeah. So I'm on good time. How about that? I've not run over. That's good, isn't it? We're starting on time. So Jan is going to be our first speaker today. I mentioned that Jan has been in the Feng Shui conversation for 40 years, and he's been with the Feng Shui Society right from the start, and a welcome part of the team. He always is. He has a long memory and some great ideas. And today he's going to talk about shortcuts, because he is an environmental psychologist. He's studying and working on a PhD in Feng Shui. He has a background in East and West perspectives and interior design. And I've always admired Jan's approach to life of just getting done what you need to do and then leaving all the faffing around aside. And he truly does leave this shortcut. So he's really the best person to talk to about how we can bring shortcuts in. So Jan, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you see my slides?
Definitely.
Right. So yes, as you said, Gina, we're all practitioners, except that some people actually, for some people, it's a profession. I believe strongly that there's not a single person on this planet who doesn't use Feng Shui. Everybody uses Feng Shui in some way or another. And you can see that from my presentation, but also animals use Feng Shui, even microbes use Feng Shui. If you kind of look at any living organism, plants use Feng Shui. So those principles are there, and it's just, ancient people kind of verbalized it in different ways, not only in Far East, in China, but also in the West and so on. So first, why shortcuts? So obviously, we love shortcuts. We all use shortcuts. Without shortcuts, we couldn't be doing this. Look, technology, huge shortcuts. We can be in this space in different time zones and maybe different even, seasons. We could be in one space. So we're all very good at that. And there's different names for shortcuts: hacks, time savers, cognitive accelerators. Ergonomics is part of shortcuts, rule of thumbs, heuristics, and basically help us to get things done. And an example of that would be prevention is better than cure. It's a shortcut, but also it's kind of a wisdom, yeah. So during the talk, I want you to think about your shortcuts specifically to Feng Shui. But if you've got any other amazing shortcuts, let us know. I will have some time at the end to look at that, and you can put them in your chat. There'll be some links. I'll put some links as well. Some of the things I'm going to talk about. So just a quick first shortcut. So I kind of use this idea that Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Blink, How People Make Good and Bad Decisions. You should read both parts, because the first part is about how people make bad decisions, but second part is about how people make good decisions. People just get stuck on the first part. And I got this idea of thin slicing, and this is what I do a lot, and we all do that at the same time. So it's just kind of exemplifying how it works. So how do you eat a cake? How do you slice a cake? Obviously like this, yeah. Now it's a big slice. I like cakes. You don't have to have a huge slice. You can have a sliver of the slice with a cross section of the cake. You eat it, you like it, you don't like it, and you can see it actually as well in this example, what it looks like, the whole thing. But a lot of people try to learn Feng Shui like they would eat the whole cake layer by layer. So they start with one aspect, then go to another. It takes a long time. So if you thin slice your Feng Shui, different aspects that I'm going to cover, then you get more quicker. And also we do that as well. People, I mean, homeless people use Feng Shui. They'll find a place where it's warm and maybe secluded, got some protection. That's thin slicing of Feng Shui. Yeah. So also the idea about achieving more with less. So the less you do, the more you can do it. And that's kind of Taoist principle as well. In the West, it's called 80-20 principle or Pareto's principle. You might have heard of that. So just so we're on the same page, that's my view of Feng Shui, obviously. The kind of, what does it do? What's the function of Feng Shui? Just to remind ourselves. So obviously to minimize and mitigate any environmental stresses, and there are many. Plus add and maximize positive kind of environmental factors, whatever you're doing in a positive framework, just to kind of amplify things that you want. That's Feng Shui. And then obviously you manage change. We're changing all the time. And so I'll give you a lot of little tips of how you can change your life very quickly. So yes, about those three things. So, and obviously, there'll be a few principles that I'm going to mention. And one of them is obviously yin and yang, which is the kind of second principle. The first one is obviously energy, chi, but I just want to remind you that all models are wrong. Some models are useful. So you need to kind of think in those terms that you don't want to kind of put your sort of life into Feng Shui. Use your Feng Shui in your life. Yeah. So people get dogmatic about certain aspects and they get stuck. And then obviously they have to call consultants to unravel the mystery of Feng Shui. But just a quick reminder about yin and yang. Obviously, the terms are kind of interrelated. And obviously, there's a relationship between them. And the difference is really in the degree, if you think, not in kind as such. So, for example, is an apple yin or yang? It depends how you compare it. So will be yin compared to a carrot or to meat, for example, if that's the domain is food, yeah. But it might be a yang or yin compared to something else that is more yin, like a lemon, yeah. So it's a question of degree as opposed to kind, because you can't compare an apple with a car. Different domains, if you like. So I use different ways of kind of explaining yin and yang because there's a bit of confusion. People go like a black and white sort of thinking. So my idea of yin is diverging. There's more. It's kind of more relaxing, kind of absorbing, yeah. And that's also links to entropy and matter. But yang is kind of converging, yeah. So when we started as a Feng Shui society, we diverge, which check everything. We studied everything. And then we started to converge, kind of simplify certain things and concepts so people can focus, can do less and achieve more. Let's give you a couple of examples of this. So there's a book by Philip Fernandez, I can't see it now, his name, and it talks about history of what we think and how we think it. And it takes about 8-9 hours to read regular traditional reading, this book. If you're a speed reader, you can do it in 20 minutes. But he summarized it at his talk in 2 words: divergence and convergence. Divergence and convergence. So a lot of examples of that. So for example, Britain went through this process of Brexit. So they kind of diverge from European Union, yeah, which was kind of converging different nations, yeah. Ireland's trying to converge itself, it's separate in 2 parts, but they want to. So, a mobile phone is a divergent device because there's millions of things you can do. So those 2 forces work all the time. Nowadays, I'm sure you've heard of CBDC, central digital currency, that all banks are trying to figure out how to control all the currencies and probably our lives. So that's kind of convergence, yeah. So, but when you think about different kind of aspects of Feng Shui, these 2 forces will play in different ways. But again, it's more of a difference in degree as of kind, yeah. So a couple of examples of shortcuts just to get us, because we're good at that. We just need to remind us, how we do it. So NASA has spent allegedly, hundreds of thousands of pounds to develop this super space pen that for astronauts, and you can write with this pen anywhere, in any environment, outside the space, in the ocean, anywhere, in any position, yeah. And it was great, and it works. You can actually buy it, if you want. But Russian astronauts use a pencil. That's a shortcut. First step, hold your pen ergonomically. Most people hold the pen between those two fingers. So that's how we taught incorrectly. That's not an ergonomic way of holding a pen. If you hold a pen between your two fingers, the index finger and the middle finger, it's more ergonomic. There's less pressure. They've done studies. Children naturally want to hold the pen like this because they feel kind of more in tune with their bodies. They feel, oh, it's much nicer, kind of easier. There's less tension. If you look at old paintings and scriptures, people used to hold the quail like this, or they were doing kind of Japanese things. So try that. It will take a few weeks to get used to it, but obviously if you're using a big mark, it's difficult. But for pens and pencil, that's the most ergonomic way. You're saving energy. Remember, Feng Shui is about energy and kind of being more efficient and effective. So 2 environments, obviously big contrast, and this is a question of, again, yin and yang, less or more. And both can be seen like that. So on the left, you've got 2 chairs, 2 computers, and probably a nice view, and not much on the desk. On the right side, you've got a very cluttered desk. Now, who's more kind of successful or happier with the environment? We don't know, because both can be successful. So for the person on the right side, clutter, obviously, mess is not a problem. Maybe that's how they thrive, that's kind of so. And maybe they have amazing view. So here, a lot of rubbish, nonsense, but, that, outside's beautiful. And the same with these people have a nice view, but maybe they're not focused. They don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're not creative. You don't know. It's difficult to kind of judge people without seeing the whole picture. So the ultimate Feng Shui mastery is finding this leverage point. And I'll give you some example. It's not always possible, but from acupuncture, we know that good acupuncturists will use 1 or 2 needles because they know how to shift the energy in the body. Yeah? And this is the same with Feng Shui. If you find the right leverage, you find one spot, and you can change everything. Quite often you have to do more, but Sarah Rosbach, that Gina mentioned, she said, if a geomancer can recognize chi energy, that is all there is to Feng Shui. And that's kind of ultimate thing. Obviously, I'm going to cover different ways of getting to that point, so you can become more artful, if you like, in this whole thing. So first example, I'll talk a bit about the biases, but there's a Dunning-Kruger bias where we think we know more than we do and underestimating what we don't. So I had a client who had a sleep problem. She got a lot of consultations with classical Feng Shui masters, and they tried different things, mostly directions. So they thought, oh, if you sleep this way, pointing in that, according to astrological chart, maybe you sleep better. Nothing worked. Yeah. And so I went there and discovered that actually she was using a hairdryer before she would go to sleep. And obviously hairdryers will have a lot of electrosmoke, and that affects the electrosmoke will inhibit melatonin production, didn't sleep. She stopped that one thing, she started to sleep better. So you need to know enough about environmental factors and stresses to help people. But, obviously she got there in the end. But, if she started with me, she would save herself a lot of trouble finding the kind of exploring different. Obviously it was nice, she tried different, positions. And so I'll talk about directions shortly. So you need the kind of big picture of how things work, but also you need details. You need both kind of visions, and there are books about this. And this guy in my Gilchrist wrote a very intense book. It took him 10 years to write it. But the key message from this book, and you can watch a video about this book. In 15 minutes, you understand. The book will take you probably 20 hours to read. It's very dense. So there are 2 types of attention, kind of narrow focus attention, kind of yang focus, if you like, and then broad, vigilant, open peripheral attention, where you see more, big picture details. And as you see in this animation, you've got this rabbit that's looking for some food or whatever, and there's a fox on the side, the top section of the picture. So obviously the rabbit needs to look for the food, but also needs to have peripheral vision, which is in this case more important because it might get eaten by a fox before it gets to any food. So we need both. And unfortunately, because of this small devices called mobile phones, we're losing peripheral vision, and that's a fact. Yep. So you need to kind of learn how to have open spaces, expand your view, you know, like Gina's got this view of landscape behind her. So that's kind of expansive, yeah. So, so obviously, you know, don't get stuck in one mode of thinking, because as the saying says, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see everything from as a nail. So that's, you want to avoid that, yeah. But sometimes it works, yeah. So it depends on the context and what's happening. So once you learn all the rules and everything, you can actually start breaking them and find shortcuts, yeah. So it's useful to find a big, but you can start with shortcuts as well. You don't have to learn everything, yeah. So kind of a few examples of how so in Feng Shui, most people look for health, kind of help with health, relationship, money, career, home, all kinds of things, but kind of obviously we don't have time to go to all the areas, but kind of examples of them. So you want 80% improvement in personal and professional domains. So one thing you do and your life will kind of will improve tremendously. Sleep is the key. Start with your bedroom. If you sleep well, most of your problem will start to disappear because your brain will work better, yeah? So you probably know most of those things, you know, avoid electrosmog, switch off Wi-Fi for night. Most people don't do it. It will affect your melatonin production, your deep sleep, you know, sleep in total darkness, avoid metal, you know, foam mattresses, you know, maybe put your bed in pie position if possible, solid headboard, obviously avoid geopathic stress, and possibly sleep towards north. You know, there's very little evidence that sleeping in a particular direction will help you with sleep. I just found two studies. One was that sleeping towards west was better than east, and it was a very small group, so we can't generalize it. But it was a bigger study of how animals arrange themselves, but not all animals. Some animals like to arrange themselves with the head towards north, because they kind of arranging themselves with the magnetic field of the earth. So that can work, but not all animals, and even the animals of a particular type, not all of them. So it's not universal. If it was universal, everybody would be doing, all animals would be doing, and humans would figure out after so many years being on a planet that that's the best direction. So, but obviously people use astrology and that's why, but there's certain things are more important than others. The reason it's important, sleep, because of your deep sleep. In deep sleep, it's the most essential part of your health. All the rejuvenation happens in deep sleep. You know, your DNA repair, everything is happening in deep sleep. So the more deep sleep you have, the better. So electrosmog, geopathic stress, light affect the melatonin production and affects your deep sleep. So it's a 90-minute cycle. It's not how many hours you sleep, it's 90-minute cycle. And you can see in the chart on the right, you know, that the first kind of deep sleep cycles are the deepest and then get less and less. So want to improve your productivity at work? 30% increase, yeah? Have your monitor ergonomic. So that's not an ergonomic way where people sit and look at the monitor and the neck had to, you know, you look down on the monitor and the muscles at the back of your neck get affected, and that affects your processing capacity. So the best way is have your screen in the middle kind of your eye level. So you need to move. Most computers have kind of stands you can adjust. Unfortunately, I'm going to stand that. I had to put a lot of books underneath, but it works. So yes, so you need to have and the study suggests just that one thing can improve productivity up to 30%. Now, for women, the size of the monitor is important. So the bigger monitors, women perform better. For men, doesn't make that much difference. Yeah. So obviously, if you're working from a laptop, you need to have breaks. Yeah. So then kind of optimize how your head works. Examples of clutter and non-clutter. So Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, very cluttered office. He was most creative then. Then he went into a Zen mode, you know, nothing really, and not so creative. And then his successor, Tim Cook, look at his desk. Look how tidy it is. That's not possible. Nobody is that tidy. I think it was a photo shoot, but, you know, it takes a lot of energy and amount of attention to organize it in a grid-like way, you know. And unfortunately, Apple's not very creative now. So I think it should mess up their offices big time, and maybe the creativity come back to. Just remember this, that's the first desk by Steve Bezos, you know, Amazon. I think he made it up from something. I think it looks like one of those things that we use for wallpapering the walls. So you just, you know, so yeah, so it doesn't matter really, you know, ultimately, but obviously it helps, you know, if you've got a nice office, nice desk, helps. You want to boost your creativity, which is important in life, and finding shortcuts, have more plants. So studies suggest, a lot of studies on plants and biophilia, the more plants, the more nature you have, the happier you'll be. So, and it's difference between, sort of original ideas by males and kind of other ideas, creative ideas by females. Yeah, so this women and men kind of look differently at certain aspects. Obviously, kind of generalization, but see what works for you and what plans kind of work for you best. So now this is a big one. You want to decrease your inflammation. Inflammation is the kind of problem behind any illness, really. So it depends on the studies, between 10, 50, 80, 90%, you can decrease inflammation. Very simple idea. And some of you are already doing it. It's grounding or earthing. Lots of studies on my website. You can look at those studies and kind of connects you with to the earth, to Schumann resonance. Obviously, you can't walk barefoot everywhere. So there's an option. Your bath, if you've got a bath, and you have spent maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes in your bath, you will naturally be grounded. Yeah, I've tested lots of baths, and most baths are grounded, unless it's plastic and there's something wrong, very rarely. So, if you touch the tap, you're washing dishes, you'll be kind of grounded as well. Yeah. So obviously add some Epsom salts, magnesium, because when you're stressed, your body depletes itself of magnesium. So add some Epsom salt, and that's one of the best way to absorb magnesium actually through your bath. Yeah. So Paul McCartney famously started the whole movement on the cover of this. Obviously, he was upsetting his habit of smoking. so and there's some interesting studies how that works actually. People who have bad habits and they start grounding themselves, and things change. Yeah? So there's earthing mats, sometimes it's not possible to have that, but so you can buy them, like check how it works. It doesn't work everywhere. So you need to kind of have somebody to measure something. But I developed this device called Schumann resonance generator, and this my website. I'll put some links later, and it kind of puts that frequency around you in your home. So your body naturally seeks that frequency because it's a natural kind of relaxation state, the alpha state. The 7.83 hertz. It's more or less the alpha state, so it kind of relaxes you. And there've been many studies on that as well. But the easiest one, automatic tiles. I love this. A lot of houses have now tiles that are recommended. Obviously not everywhere, but the kitchen, bathrooms, obviously. And you can measure the grounding effect. You can get this little kit online, and you can measure how much this electrosmog is in your body, and then you ground yourself, it goes to zero. It's amazing. Very simple. Once you do it, you don't have to think about it. It's a hack. It's a shortcut. And once it's done, it works. Yeah. So you want to improve your relation. Again, different percentages, because people are different environments. But you want to improve your relationship. Have more pictures of people. Your family, friends, anybody. Some people don't like it, so there'll be another shortcut for that. Yeah, because the more pictures you have, your vagus nerve, which is the most important nerve in your body, gets activated. But any pictures, will help. But cold showers is the easiest way to activate your vagus nerve, and then your body works. So a couple of minutes, especially at the back of your neck, if you put some cold water, it activates your things. But anything kind of makes you happy will activate your vagus nerve. So reading, people like reading. Obviously, I'm a bookaholic. I've got thousands of books. And so the more books you have around, you make you happy. Now, there'll be one hack for reading as well. Will help you with studying more and in terms of Feng Shui. But in this picture, you've got mirrored tiles. So avoid anything that kind of fragments it. The whole world is kind of fragmented, so it's diverging, which is good. Sometimes that divergence is not positive, but avoid anything that kind of divides. So some people have the mirrored tiles, some people have mirrored cabinets, and they be divided in half. So avoid that. Yeah, but get more books. You don't have to even read them. Studies suggest that the more books you have, the more intelligent you'll be, and you don't actually need to read them. Obviously, by reading, you become even more intelligent and wise. Yeah. So we've got this idea in Feng Shui. By the way, it's a shortcut. It just gives you your life encapsulated on one page, so you can look at different areas of your life and just change them. Yeah. So a couple of stories from my life. So I got this postcard from Tallinn, from Estonia, from a friend, and I put it in the travel area of my office. I wasn't intending to go to Tallinn, to Estonia. 3 months later, I was working for the government of Estonia. I couldn't believe it. So be careful what you put on your walls. I can tell lots of stories. Another example. So at one point, I changed the screensaver on my computer to kind of nice open spaces, beach. I've never been to Caribbean. Yeah. 6 months later, I ended up living in Barbados for a year. It was a long holiday, very hot. Yeah. So Feng Shui is a kind of ritual, but you need an intention. Obviously, we're doing all kinds of things, but you add that intention, or sometimes without intention, like in the case of Tallinn. It wasn't my intention to go there, but it happened, yeah? And the same with the Caribbean. I was thinking going holiday, not that long though. So Feng Shui is a kind of physical affirmation, and that's a shortcut of thinking how Feng Shui is. But ultimately, it's a ritual. Everything we do is a ritual, you know? So lots of different ideas for, you know, activating different parts of your bhagwa, you know, fish is famous, money plants. I've changed some people's life, just adding one thing. You know, people call me and they ask me, oh, I don't have the resources for your advice. But I said, well, I can give you that for free. Get a money plant. And shortly, you know, they get the money. Somehow it works, yeah? So because they have a strong need, they have a passion for changing their life through Feng Shui, and just anything can work, yeah? And sometimes you need to be more specific, but sometimes the general advice like that would work as well. Fish owners are one of the happiest, you know, the studies suggest. So, you know, but obviously not everybody's into fish tanks, but pictures of fish. There's a nice kind of koi cup. Actually, I sell it on my website. It's a 3D picture, so kind of get the depth of the fish. Yeah? So we all geniuses, and we notice things all the time. And just some people just kind of go next step and do something about it. So Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin because he was a very, very messy lab technician. He left petri dishes and they kind of started to get moldy. He discovered penicillin, saved million lives. Yeah. So obviously we get distracted, lots of things. We notice things, but we get distracted. So kind of this building the pattern recognition ability is very important. And this is how you do it. So obviously, you know, you analyze things, you see things, you know, we have 300 million pattern recognizers in our New York. We see patterns all the time. You wouldn't recognize me if you didn't know that the face looks like that, yeah? So you analyze, you break down that kind of divergence, kind of yin domain, and you synthesize information into something that is useful. So on the right side, you see this lady, she's too close, obviously, to the numbers, and that's why she can't see it. So remember, focus, but also big picture. And quite often, big picture is more important than the details. So very simply, what changes the most, what is repeated, what's missing will help you to identify a pattern, you know. So in your home, what are the changes, you know? Obviously, outside, inside, that's a big change. Between the rooms, in the thresholds, you know, in the doors, that's a big change. Staircase is a big change, yeah? What is repeated? What things you have most in your home, yeah? I had one client and I walked in, it was like lots of triangles. I couldn't believe, like, a triangle mirror. Not many people have triangle mirrors. And the first mirror was triangle ashtray, triangle pots. It's like, what's the deal with the triangles? And then I look outside. It was on a triangle plot. So the triangle plot affected them, primed them kind of subliminally, and they start collecting. They didn't notice. It's like, you know, oh yeah, it's actually, yeah, lots of triangles. They didn't notice they were collecting triangles. And obviously what's missing, what's not working, what can you change? So looking at difference and sameness, but a basic kind of algorithm, this computer and the Zoom works on the most basic algorithm, so you can use some technologies, shortcuts, is and or not. So when you look at something, you can ask yourself and, or you can ask yourself or you can say not, yeah? So that's the most basic algorithm. There's a book about that as well. You can read about it. So yeah, those three things, what changes the most, what's repeated, what's missing, will help you to look at patterns and you know what's working, what's not working, what to change. So a very random pattern, but you already know the pattern. You're just seeing it and not seeing the pattern yet. So it's random, but that's the pattern. And you do it all the time. So random, yeah, all the shapes, but that's the pattern. You know the pattern, you remember the shapes, you'll know which shapes is which, yeah. So, another example, so if you've seen this picture, you know the little thing that is hiding there. So do you see the trees instead of the forest, or the other way around? Or there's something else, you know? So I'll give you a little moment, and suddenly things will start to pop up. And the word is faces. So So there are a lot of faces. Yeah. So before you didn't see it, and now you're seeing it. Faces, yeah. And you can't unsee it now. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Yeah. You can't unsee it. So the face on the bottom right, nice noise, looks like face, and then try not to see it. You can't. You can't. So once you activate your kind of pattern recognition, which we have naturally, it's nothing, but start to think about it, reflect on it, you start to see patterns everywhere. So little fun thing for you, which word jumps at you? So just focus on one word. You can do more. There'll be words kind of hidden in this anything. So I can see purpose, I can see love, I can see money, I can see, what else I can see here? Obviously, looking at this different times, kind of different things will kind of jump at you, yeah? So, but the words that kind of jump at you, your brain might be thinking about it already. You kind of, it's at the back of your mind, and maybe that's important, maybe not, and strength, another comes up. So lots of things. You can do a screenshot and then look at that later. It's kind of fun thing to do. So people have been thinking about it for ages, so it's not rocket science. You don't have to invent all those things. There's something called TRIZ, yeah? And it's a Russian kind of invention. People who are working in a patents office, they notice patterns and they then verbalize them. So there's 40 different patterns, things that change. You can apply it in Feng Shui. So, on the right side, I can pull out some of my favorites. Skipping, skip harmful action, stop eating junk food. It's a shortcut. It actually doesn't cost you because you're not doing it. Yeah. So color changes, you can change the color, in Feng Shui. Yeah. You can do certain things that work, certain feel less that way. So lots of different ways of looking at it, but the information for kind of pattern recognition changes out there. And it's not defined specifically to Feng Shui. And these principles are kind of universal. You can apply it to anything. You can apply all those principles to your relationship if you want, or how to set up a business. So priming. So I'll give you a little tip, how to read all the books, you want to read very quickly. So I haven't written any books on Feng Shui, but I wrote one book on speed reading. That's my book on speed reading. And there's a technique. So I'll put you the links and you can read about that techniques. But basically what you do, you take a book, any book on Feng Shui or anything, and just pick one book, and you open the book on first page, yeah? And you look at 4 corners of the book, and you turn the pages as quickly as possible. You don't move your eyes from one page, so you see both pages. And you kind of download that book. And basically, it primes your brain. So this is what I'm doing. I'm looking at you. I don't even have to look at the pages because it's in my peripheral vision. And my brain is kind of scanning the information. So then when you go for the book, you go quicker because you've seen it once. You already have seen it once. And that's priming. Another example of priming. So if you fold that's a good example. If you fold a piece of paper very quickly, it takes about 5, 6, 7 seconds. Yes, and you can't fold it again. Yeah, and then you unfold it. So you've got a groove. Obviously, that's a pattern. Yeah, and then you can fold it at the back of it without looking even much quicker. Fold it. Yeah. So that's priming. That's how your brain works. That's how learning works. The repetition is learning basically. But you can download your books or whatever books you want, and then it kind of is in your mind, and then suddenly it starts to kind of work for you. So obviously, sometimes you need to do it 2 or 3 times, but sometimes just once. Yeah. So a useful thing to download all your Feng Shui resources. Yeah. And there's more on my website, on Speed Reading website. So then you've got all that information, you kind of overwhelm. A lot of people read and study everything. And so simple questions will get you the right sort of information. So what does it do? Yeah. What does Feng Shui do? What does this remedy do? That will give you extra information. You start to kind of probe into the area. Do you want more? Or do you want less? What else? Yeah. So that's sort of key kind of question you can ask, kind of lenses that help you to assess the information, and then you know what's relevant, what's less relevant. So there's a lot of kind of sloppy thinking, unfortunately, in any discipline, not only Feng Shui, lots of superstition and nonsense. Actually, people pay me a lot of money to unravel the mystery of Feng Shui. And that's basically because we have confirmation bias. We want to see certain things, you know, you're making assumption, lots of superstition. We're all superstitious to some extent, kind of wishful thinking that, you know, moving furniture will change all my life. No? Can change certain aspects, but not maybe not all your. Kind of lack of basic common sense, basic knowledge. People don't understand how physics works sometimes. Yeah? Limited beliefs and kind of perspective, and basically lack of critical thinking. People not questioning, you know, not researching, not challenging the dogma, and so on. So I wrote a blog about, and I think I talked about the bias at one of the other talks. So there's a video about that on our Feng Shui Society website as well. So yeah, so you need to challenge yourself, talk to people, have some kind of a way of reflecting on all that information. Yeah. So famous picture, you know, those guys trying to figure out, and they're looking at details. They're blind. So they're looking at it and they're reporting to each other, and then after some time, you know, maybe, but they should ask somebody who's got eyesight and will tell them what it is. Yeah. So that's a shortcut. Yeah. So the same, you know, so there's certain obviously things that we know and certain things that we don't know. And it's good to be aware of that. Yeah. And we're all learning. So we want speed, we want things done quickly, you know, short of time, and then results, we want effectiveness. And it's a good example of how it works. Also, that applies to Feng Shui. So in the first, on the top, this boat or ship or whatever is going in the wrong direction. Everybody's drunk, the engine's not working, it's a mess. They're not going to get where they're going with the thing. And then they sort out the engine, the new captain, everybody's working perfect, but they're still going the wrong direction. So direction, what you want is more important than actually how you do it. Yeah, obviously, if you're going the right direction and everything is working, you're going to get there faster. Yeah. So putting things right in the framework doesn't necessarily change the framework. It's a starting process. Yeah, but it's not everything. So coming back to this picture, my favorite example. So you know, sometimes doing nothing is better than being busy doing nothing. Yeah. So these people on the left, maybe they've got a nice clean environment. Obviously, there's some issues, got a sloping ceiling, and you know, those office chairs are not the best office chairs. They're not office chairs. Yeah. So lots of things can be done. Yeah. But maybe there's kind of sitting there and being distracted by the nice you know, view. But the person on the right with the messy environment, very focused. They know what they're doing, and the clatter, the noise, doesn't disturb them actually. Yeah? So it all depends. Yeah. So another way of looking at this is kind of thinking what affects us most. Yeah. And obviously power is very important. You know, it's a measure of control you have in your life, and you can't control your environment. So there's a little picture of a boat. You know, so we can't control the sea. We can't. Yeah. Can't control the weather as much. Yeah. But we obviously can control our boat. You know, we can control what we do. Yeah. So what has authority of your life, Feng Shui or you? So the kind of my view of order of power is that we have the most power. Then the people around us can affect us. Yeah. Family, etc. And then the environment. Then Feng Shui. So Feng Shui is important. Obviously, you won't have a nice environment. It's all good, but it's not the most important thing. You know, people like Nelson Mandela. He was in a prison for over 20 years. It didn't affect him, kind of make him stronger, actually. Yeah. People who survive concentration camps, again, you know, so you need to start with yourself, then look at others, and then the environment. Yeah. Obviously, look at all of those things, and then you're unstoppable. So there's a placebo concept, and I wrote a blog about it in more details, but basically placebo and nocebo, opposite of placebo, it kind of help you to understand how Feng Shui works, and it's magic. Yeah. So placebo is a positive belief how things works, kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, your positive expectation. It's basically a ritual. Yeah. And nocebo is opposite. It's a negative belief, kind of self-defeating prophecy. And a lot of people, including myself, sabotage sometimes good projects. Yeah. There's loads of research on placebo, but it's in one way of all Feng Shui is placebo. You can't separate the ritual that you do, even if you think there's all science and research behind it, but you can't separate your intention because you're moving your furniture for something. You're not doing it randomly, you know, just because you've got nothing else to do. So that's a useful way to think about how you do Feng Shui. So it all works. So little quotes from people that I admire. Imagination is more important than knowledge. said Einstein, because imagination is almost infinite. Yeah, knowledge is limited. Yeah, and probably imagination created all knowledge. Yeah. So just kind of creating an environment that, I already mentioned, you have some plants, nature, your imagination will work better. Another quote from my favorite philosopher, Gilles Deleuze: bring something new to this world, start something new. We're here for probably a reason. Yeah. So don't waste your life. Do something, bring something crazy and new, innovative. I studied saints because they were doing some pretty far out things, that really changed the paradigms. And another philosopher, Claire Colebrook, she said, a problem is a way of creating a future. So, obviously resolve problems on a daily basis, yeah, but that's a nice way of looking at problems. People don't like problems or challenges and stuff, but actually I thrive on problems because I can see a potential for changing it. So when plants grow and evolve, they do so by way of problems, developing features to avoid predators, to maximize light, or to retain moisture. Yeah, so that's Feng Shui. That's a beautiful example of how Feng Shui works. I don't have much time to go into time, running out of time, but obviously Feng Shui is about space, but also time. Lots of different perspective on that, astrology. But Greeks have a very, very neat way of classification of time. So obviously we live in kind of chronological time, present, past, future, and so on. And we use clocks and calendars to measure that. But there's other types of times, kairos and ion, where kind of beyond this chronological time, you can go beyond. And basically, kairos and ion is like now, everything is happening in now. And by going beyond kind of, obviously you need both, beyond kind of chronological things, you can start in. Miracles happen when people are present, when all your energy is 100% in the present moment, you're congruent, and things happen, yeah. And there's lots of evidence for that as well. So look at different times and then go beyond time. Right. So really at the end, so key kind of reminders. So thinking of shortcuts without cutting corners. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with cutting corners, yeah. But if it's going to damage you or create some negative consequences, don't cut corners. Look for patterns, yeah. Ask good quality question. Remember about this algorithm, and or not. Just learn about decision making. So there's a book, Thinking Better, with the shortcuts, on the right side. Don't assume that you already know what is important or trivial. Yeah? If Alexander Fleming look at this petri dish, that's trivial, he wouldn't discover penicillin. Yeah. And again, so be on the lookout what might be overlooked. Yeah. And obviously details are important, but also big picture. I think big picture is more important. Be curious about, study tests, question things, imply yourself with evidence. You look for evidence. You've got the internet, go to Google Scholar, all that research about different aspects is there. Yeah. But also think like those people, like a Feng Shui master, like Sherlock Holmes, like philosopher, or any other people who are very good at those shortcuts. Yeah. And kind of, obviously, the Swiss knife is a convergence. You can do many things with one little knife. Yeah. So the last thought is sometimes you walk on water and sometimes you take a bridge. Remember that. There are different ways of doing things, yeah? And we've got a bridge in London. This is the Millennium Bridge. It was a problem. A lot of people start walking, got wobbly. So without rebuilding the bridge, they put some stabilizers, the dampers, and not cost them a bit, but not rebuilding the bridge, and so they fixed the problem. That was a shock. So what I'm interested now is, what are your shortcuts? So, you can unmute yourself and tell me very quickly. We've got a bit of time, or put it in the chat. Yeah. So there's my details, and I'll put also the links that I was talking about. So anyone.
Do you want to change the screen so that we're looking at you? Everybody could maybe take a screenshot of your details there, and then we can see you, Jan. If you stop the sharing in a second. You have an interesting mind, Jan.
Thank
and
you.
We're grateful. You're an original thinker. Let me spotlight you.
Right,
Yeah. spotlight. Okay.
So I'm putting the links in the chat so you can get all the links.
Okay, well done, lovely. And your question, well, people may have questions. We could do a couple of minutes of that before we go and have a tea break. Has anybody got a question? And you asked them a question, didn't you, to give you feedback on what their shortcuts were. So I don't know, anybody wants to write anything in the chat or put their hand up. I'll look at the big view to comment. Oh yeah, we've got a comment from Marta. Where's Marta?
Hello. Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jan. I really, really loved your contribution because I'm a bit of I'm a student at the London School of Feng Shui, for starters, but we've always been taught that clutter is a very bad thing. So I felt bad for a little while because I love my books, as you do. I love my plants, and I've always been a bit messy. But I've discovered through the years that's the way my brain works, because my creativity needs that, because it allows me to I don't know, to focus, and my intuition starts working, and I get really nice ideas when I have clutter around me. I know it sounds bad, but unfortunately that's the way it is. And you know, I felt bad for a while, but now listening to you, I feel a bit better, to be honest.
There are books about clutter that is good for you. Yes, so I think I've got a blog about clutter as well somewhere.
Yeah, I'll go and have a look. Thank you so much.
People have different preferences, and you have to respect that. There's some studies suggest that when people have clear environment, they maybe think better. But there's, you know, people who are very creative, and
yeah, exactly. I think creative people need. I'm not saying like having junk everywhere, but I think they need something that sparks the creativity. They need to have that focus, something that really, I don't know, makes them figure out things.
Einstein famously said, you know, if a cluttered desk is a reflection of a cluttered mind, what is an empty desk?
Yeah. Yes, that's very true. So thank you so much.
If it works, use it. If it doesn't work, don't use it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I just add about dismantling the aspect of clutter, because there's clutter of too much stuff that's been around a long time, that's not put away, that's in the wrong place, has no value, and then I have a tendency to come and explode. I've got a newspaper, a book, something arrived, lots of things around, and it stimulates me. And I think there's different types of clutter. There's the long stuff that's not put away, that really does not add any value except remind you of things you haven't done. And then there's stuff around that stimulates rather than a pristine vanilla environment. So the word needs unpacking, and I think you're making some good distinctions there. Well done, Marta. Anybody else got a question? Yeah.
When I can't find anything on my desk, I start to declutter. Yeah, but if it's working, because it takes a lot of energy to keep clutter-free environment, so sometimes it's not efficient.
Yeah, you have to work out your own way of being with your stuff, don't you? Okay, thanks, Marta. Anybody else want to make a quick comment before we have
some comments in the chat?
Yeah.
So Joy Taylor, my shortcut is asking the client what already works and what doesn't work for them in spite of any Feng Shui rules. Don't try and fix something that isn't broken. Keep things simple and practical. Absolutely, that's a shortcut. Yeah. Another one, Becky, what are my shortcuts? So many little things in the everyday, I think. Like an extension cord with an off switch where I keep my phone and computer chargers plugged into, and it's tied onto a bookshelf, so it's close to a chair. Yeah, proximity, you know, making things work, you know, it's ergonomics. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. I find labels helpful. Just label things, then I can find them. And then when they're not there, there's a label and the container's empty.
And another quote from Dennis Lee: what feels good is good Feng Shui. If it doesn't feel good, it's not good Feng Shui. Yeah, use your emotions, you know, to evaluate your environment. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about that, or are you all kind of still digesting the information? Jan, do you just want to quickly put up your last page that's been requested with the contact details? And then you can, people can, you know how to take a screenshot on your computer, you can take that. It'll be there in the recording. Just do that. And okay, we're a few minutes over, but we're going to have a 7-minute tea and break. Tea and break. 7. Come back in 7 minutes. It's 3 minutes past the hour now. 7 minutes past the hour. You can stay here and ask Jan a question if you choose to. We can record it and then it will be on the record. But if nobody's got questions, everybody's having a break. So Jan, you're putting that up there. Fine. Put in the chat if you want to ask Jan a question. Otherwise, we can. And then thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jan. As I say, you're an original thinker, and that was excellent.
What time do we start?
In 7 minutes, 10 past the hour.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think anybody's got a question. People enjoyed what you did. Right, go and get a cup of tea. Yeah, there is a lot to think about. I agree there. I've got questions for Jan, but we'll ask it later. Okay, let's put the recording on pause then.
Thank you.
Welcome back from our break. So our next presentation, and thank you, Jan, for that excellent start to our day. That was absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure people who are not here will look forward to seeing that on the recording. A lot of detail in there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go into breakout rooms. The intention is to put 4 of you together. Hopefully everybody will show up for a discussion. And, you know, really what the Feng Shui Society has been about from the start is examining what are the skills needed in Feng Shui to be a Feng Shui practitioner, taking into account different cultures, the fact it's modern life, rather than simply looking to a Chinese ancient curriculum, which I remember, I don't know who else went, but Christian certainly was with me when we went to China in 1995 maybe, and we saw some books that had not been burnt. They were several hundred years old, showing positions of houses, you know, these ancient Feng Shui books, and it was a privilege to see them. That, you know, and the name is very much from China. But there are many other ways of, as Jan has just pointed out, of relating to our space. Animals relate to space, of creating a place of protection and shelter. So over the years, the Feng Shui Society has been at the core of deciding what would be good to include in a body of knowledge, things that are essential, the things that are desirable. And as people come into the Feng Shui conversation as an enthusiast, as a practitioner, as a professional Feng Shui consultant, they're bringing with them their life skills from law, from healing, from teaching, you know, many different life skills, experiences, places they've lived or not lived, you know. Some people have moved house every year. Some people have lived in the same place for 30 years. Some people, their design, their profession takes them in and out of people's home, like an interior designer. They're used to seeing homes. Other people, it's new to them. So everybody comes to this with a different background. But we have core skills, and then we have, after that, additional specialities that people develop. So our conversation this morning in this is a think tank is to look at the things that we feel people need to have. And Jan and Jackie have prepared a document which Jan has shared in advance, and we've got it here now on Google Docs for you to go to. And what is on this document, and I want to go to my screen, professional Feng Shui checklist, things that you feel, I think on page 1, things that you feel are completely core to the basic understanding of Feng Shui. And then I'm doing a click on the next page, and then it is things that you might add on as a specialty, as a further development, as an interest. And then the next page is there for comment. So really, I think this is an interesting opportunity to reflect on your own Feng Shui journey, what you've learned, what you're bringing, what you might feel that you need more of, what you might feel you've studied and you don't like, you know, you're not attracted to that. There's a lot of detailed information in Feng Shui, but also we show up, and it's about us and our intuition and how we interpret things and how we empower, if we're a practitioner working with a client, to go in and tell them they got it all wrong and they need to change it, is completely the opposite of what we need to do. Is empowering people. We find circumstances challenging. We reflect with the client, you know, how that's developed, what they want to change. So it's a very collaborative process. And often, you know, I'm sure those of you who have been practicing Feng Shui, you can go in and think, where do I start? I really don't know. And then be guided by the consultation. And as the consultation happens, the place reveals itself, the story reveals itself, the future possibility reveals itself, and it becomes a collaborative process. And I do remember, I don't know who said it, I don't know if Bill Spears said it, but I think it was actually, because I remember doing several consultations with him in a day, and we would go to a house and we think we've just been here. This is exactly the same conversation as the last one. It's almost the same house. And then I would ask him why today, in the 5 or 6 consultations that we were doing, as he flew over from New York and did quite a lot of consultations in a day, why has everybody got issues with their parents? What's that about? And he said, because I'm working on the issue. That's what's showing up. And it's an interesting way of something reflecting from the outside on our own inner journey. And maybe you've had experience of that too. So that's my long introduction to that. I'm going to put you in groups of 4. I will keep out of the conversation to make sure everybody's in a group. And if somebody ends up with a group of 1, I will move you. If you have a question, flag it up. But I think what will be good is to give you 20 minutes for a conversation to discuss what I've talked about, what's on that document, 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll have an open discussion. Are there any questions for me at this stage? Anybody got a question or a comment? Nope. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to do the breakout rooms and I'm going to make that 20 minutes and then have a report back. You don't have to elect one person to do the group report. You can if you choose to. Otherwise, you can come back with your comments, and I think that would be a rich space. So as I'm now putting them into breakout rooms, I'm going to pause the recording. Jan? Okay, welcome back from the group discussions. We've had 4 or 5 rooms, and Jan has got that document, an online document, and very smartly enabled it to capture real information. And Jan, over to you. You can share what you've got from the responses from the groups.
So we had 13 responses. Obviously, you can still do it if you got it open. You can do it if you haven't done it, or if you're doing it as a group. But as you can see on the screen, certain things more important than others, obviously. And anything above, 80% or 90% will be important. Interesting, the history of Feng Shui didn't get much response. And then understanding the key flow in the body and so on. So that's from the kind of classical view. And then on the second page, we had different responses. We've got 66% for clutter clearings, popular evidence-based Feng Shui, 66. Bazi again is part of the first one, but kind of 75%, 9-star key. And so again, the chi-based energy work, because obviously that's to do with the body as a Feng Shui instrument, didn't get much response. So most of the responses are to do with the environment and other things. So yeah, and just keep updating. There's a bit more now. So
wow, I'm surprised to see idiopathic stress at only 46%, but that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, maybe some people don't understand how it works, And then the electromagnetic radiation, 46% as well, which are kind of big factors. And Tanya's going to talk about.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
Next, yeah. So maybe, and then some comments below: report writing, space clearing, pendulum work. There's so much options. Yes, be practical, work with clients. Yes. And most of the items could be deemed separate professions from Feng Shui. Okay, that's an interesting point. Anything, my understanding of Feng Shui is very simple. Anything to do with the environment is Feng Shui. But if, for example, face reading is not really, well, obviously it's part of environment, but it's your body kind of reading. So it's not really Feng Shui, but you could use the Feng Shui principles for face reading. Some people do. So I make that kind of distinction in terms of, what's the environmental factors and what's kind of physical factors or mental factors. Yes. So,
yeah, but that's, if you have the skill to read faces, it becomes a tool, another diagnostic tool which you may choose to pursue, especially when you're with someone, then they're not in their house. You look at their face, and then you may go to the house and you get that endorsement of what you saw in the face is replicated in the house. From a fractal point of view, it's another gateway in, isn't it?
Yes. Well, we'll share that, maybe some people still be doing this. So we'll share that on our website because it's a very useful thing. And now the reason I didn't kind of split into practitioners and, people who starting enthusiasts is because, as I said earlier, we all practitioners. And I just wanted kind of general poll of what people think and what's important to them. Obviously, we could do just practitioners, could use the public, and we'll get different results. But I think it's give us a kind of general idea about what's important for people in terms of those kind of gold standards of Feng Shui.
Very good, very good. Okay, should we move now and see what comments people have? I'm going to go to gallery view and give us, can I find my gallery view? Gallery, and see what feedback you had from your discussions. Put your hand up or unmute.
Well, I didn't realize we were supposed to be ticking these. We just spent the time talking rather than clicking boxes.
Well, you can do it later. You can do it later.
Yeah. No, it's a good idea, but yeah, I think someone else. Atifa, you were going to share back from our group.
Yes, I was going to summarize from the discussion we had. I think it was breakout room 1. You spent the time discussing the different approach as well as the kind of the balance between having a sound basis on the body of knowledge for Feng Shui, as well as using that to then grow the intuition to serve what the client needs to make their life better. And I think the key point there is that whilst the approach to work may be different, but there needs to be that sound basis in the body of knowledge, in which we can then use the practitioner's intuition. We also discuss the different approach in communicating the guidance and the output to the client, albeit via report or via recordings or something that the client themselves needs to kind of pick up and be responsible to follow. And the fact that at the end of the day, it's really what's really important is to make sure that we make difference in the client's life, and that the issue that they come to the practitioners are actually solved, and there needs to be a follow-up on the back of it. Anything that anybody else wants to add on that summary from the breakout room 1?
I think the main point I was making about the whole thing, there is so much to study, and some of us have studied more than others, of course, is we've got to serve the client. So we have to meet what the client issue is and give them a direction for a solution in life. And it doesn't matter what systems we use, what mechanisms, whether we're using classical or black hat or ancestral timeline dynamics, whatever people have developed. It doesn't matter. It's giving the client what they need. And the other main point that came up was there is so much knowledge to study, and as I suggest with my teaching in groups, is that if we are fully present with the client in the property, on the land, and we ask the bigger picture, our guides, angels, helpers, will be given the knowledge we need, even if we haven't studied it or know the answer. And I think that's a crucial thing. So it's like doing the work on ourselves in order to be able to be totally and utterly still in the present and connect with the Akashic record, the Akashic field, which includes the client and the land and everything that's gone on, and you're shown exactly what you need. And this is how I'm guided and worked with for years now. I'm being trained with some unbelievable sacred geometries that I know I've not learned from people this lifetime, but they come through from, you know, the ancestors, Plato and other masters. So I think that was the crucial thing, that we don't have to worry about, got to study for another 30 years or whatever. Yeah, I think that was a major point that came through.
Thank you, Christian. On that list, Jan, is there somewhere, because what you've highlighted there, and both of you with your feedback, is us as the vessel being present to then interpret through whatever filters we have and our knowledge, the best for the client. And then what do we then do to develop our own capacity to receive information, interpret it, and support the client. I'm not sure whether that's how that's presented as a skill on the list, Jan. And another thing that you highlighted there was how we communicate all these ideas we have. As you just said, Christian, there's a lot of learning out there. Well, and we appreciate we're on a lifetime of learning, data and from clients and from life. And the ability to communicate that in a way that the client understands is core. And that's what you were saying, Atifa, that communicating, whether it's, you know, how we do that, but it's being able for them to land with them in a way that they get, and it's useful to their future.
So the overall umbrella we have is intuitive Feng Shui. So use your intuition, whatever that means to you. So there was an item on that list. Yeah.
Okay. Right, let's see who else has wants to share. Looking around at my screen here, I'm looking at my big view gallery. Who wants to share some thoughts and feedback or comment on what we've just heard? You know, what are the things that you discussed in your groups? I don't know what group we heard just then. Don't be shy, we're all interested. Thought. I don't know if anybody's written anything in the chat.
Well,
but, yeah.
we, in our group, we were discussing, I brought up the kind of experiences people might have with when doing consultations, follow-ups, and actually getting clients to, once you've, you know, the discussion and everything, everyone's very open, but once you actually go through, say, and implement some of the changes, the difficulty of getting the changes implemented, and what are some tips or techniques that others may have had in, you know, getting clients to move forward, and actually sometimes they can get stuck in the habits of what they're, and the situation they're in, while they want the change, they don't necessarily want to make the change. And so one of the things that did come up was intuitive Feng Shui, which I actually did not know much about. And so it was really nice to get the feedback of how intuitive Feng Shui could play into that, of things that when we see, we can look at, are some things more something affecting the nervous system? What are the different things that are happening in their homes affecting them personally that's keeping them stuck and moving forward, and how to look at it in a kind of, you know, turning it's, for me, it's like turning from like what my training is classical to understanding something in a more intuitive way was very helpful to me. And I think that would be helpful to learn a little bit more from, and it helped me to speak with others in my group to see a different perspective. So we touched on that, and then we went through the checklist together and different items of what our strengths were, and that's how we touched on the intuitive Feng Shui. So that was very helpful.
Tambi, that's lovely. Thank you very much. So it's interesting. I'm going to go back to the gallery view, my screen. It's interesting. I wonder how many of you have.
Marta has her hands up.
Okay, looking for Marta. Spotlight you. Put your hand up, Marta. Wave at me, and then I can find you. Okay, I got you.
Hello. This is more of a question. So, listening to what Christian said, and I do agree with that. because I do quite a lot of energy work and always delving deep into, myself and spirituality, but also my higher consciousness. But also what Gina said earlier, I think, about our clients. So we are here to serve them when they call us, obviously. So I've heard that our clients will, some people say that our clients will mirror ourselves a few years back, but I've also heard that our clients will match our energy, so where we're at the moment of the consultation. So I wanted to know if anybody has some thoughts, the experienced consultants, please.
So you're asking of other people examples of how a client has mirrored where that person is in life. Okay.
Yeah. So if they mirror us where we're at on our journey as consultants, but also as a person, or whether they are ourselves a few years back with the problems we had a few years back, so we are a bit more skilled to help them now. Clear enough? Sorry.
Yeah, no. Does anybody want to comment on this relationship, this dynamic between the client and you as a practitioner? I mean, I have a firm belief that we are sent the clients that we can handle.
I would say totally 100%. So I would say virtually every consultation has an aspect of my life at some level. Sometimes cuts really deep and I have to then really look at my stuff. So yeah, as Gina says, we keep learning. Okay, I've been doing it a long time and I've been an architect for what, 50 years or so. But every single client teaches me something different. And the wonderful thing is they pay me.
So it's a way of growing together. Is that it?
Yeah. It's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. Can I ask the question? Thank you very much, Marta.
Maybe I can say something. Yeah. So, but sometimes it's nothing to do with us. So I had for the whole week, I had clients with one particular issue. Obviously, I understand this concept. I examined my life. Wasn't me. But it was for me to learn. So in one week, I had all people wanted to conceive a baby. And it wasn't my issue, but I learned a lot. And,
that must be frightening to have that come up as a recurring thing.
I know. So no, it wasn't me. So yeah, so sometimes it is us, and sometimes it's just because we are just to serve them and to learn something. So obviously I learned a lot, and it was very interesting.
Yes, we may have set an intention in the world for something, and it appears to us through this communication of dialogue. I'm going to ask if anybody has experience. If anybody has a practice of going back to the client a week, a month later to check on them and get feedback, or whether you finish with the client,
always for months, sometimes a year later. Yeah, I think it's part of what we should be offering, because I always say a consult is not a one-hit wonder. It really isn't. So we've got that responsibility to make sure their development, their unfolding, it's going as best it can. And people often write, weeks later, months later. And I think, and I put it in my email sort of agreement when we set up the consult, that I'm available for that, so that the client knows that they're not just being dropped the day after the consult. I think that's part of the professionalism.
Okay. Well, can I just ask?
I completely agree, but sometimes it's just an event. Obviously, Feng Shui is a process, but buying or selling a house is just an event, and it's closed. And then, but then obviously the consultation is a process, as Christian described. And I had clients for the last 35 years, 40 years. Yeah. It's quite interesting to see how it develops. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, let's hear from somebody perhaps who hasn't spoken, who is talking with clients, and ask whether you build into your costing a post-consultation meeting, or whether you just simply make yourself available and check on them, or do you make it a 2+ stage process where you say, I'm coming for the consultation, and then in 1 month I'm going to talk to you? Has anybody got any feedback on how they structure that? Wants to share that? Somebody here, Darina? Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I do that, but I don't calculate it in a first consultation. I make the division between the first consultation, and then I mention during the first consultation that it's an option. but I don't go earlier than 6 weeks, 6 weeks or 2 months. I don't go earlier because people need time. And I have experiences that they, after I talk about it, they send me the pictures, and I also of what they did, or sometimes they even ask short questions, because that is what I calculate in the price of the consultation, that they can ask me, not every day after the consultation, but like several questions, it's open. And with few clients, I did after 2 months or 2 months and a half, I did another one, which was a requested need. So they spoke out the need. Yes, please, I would like you to come again. And I encountered these difficulties, or this was easy. And then we talk about issues which went easy, because I found a very, very, very interesting issue what Tanvi mentions, is that you can give advice and you prioritize and you do the reporting, but there are moments or times when clients have difficulties to implement the decisions. They know they should do it, they agree, it's okay, they say in a consultation, yes, I know, and then they don't do it, and they do half, or they do only 2, and then it doesn't work. So yeah, that would be a topic that I would be very much interested in to dive in deeper, how to help them or how to approach these things.
Okay, you bring up a good point there, how to help in the implementation of all the things. And I'm going to ask everybody now, thank you very much, Darina. I'm going to ask everybody now, who here, spotlight, who does a written report, or instead of that, puts an iPhone down and sits down with the client and says, okay, I'm going to give you your top 5 things to do, and dictates an audio recording there and then. Do you do both, or are you, first of all, who does a written report as a standard? I was looking at the hands, there's quite a few hands going up. Yeah. And who doesn't do that, or relies mainly on in the moment with I used to take a dictaphone, but now we've got iPhones, but anyway, a smartphone, who records something on the day in the conversation. Maybe you do both. Who is anybody doing audio recordings and giving them a in the moment list? Nobody here. Okay. Interesting. Who's entered the waiting room? Okay.
I find it's I just respond to what the client needs for as long as they need, within reason, because it's always going to differ. And if I don't do reports, as I said in our breakout. So I think the client needs to make their own notes and take that responsibility. And also, I'm very lazy and I don't like writing reports. So, you know, there's enough going on in life, quite honestly. And it just gives a client more work to do to read a report. I will email and say, oh, by the way, remember to do this, or do the Ho'oponopono or space clear once a week, you know, real basics, and then leave it up to the client to come back. And they do.
Mm-hmm.
They come back, then I give them specific feedback that they need. And I find that works for me.
So they'll send you a question or a photo and say, tweak or finesse this for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And oh, you know, I put this here, what do you think? Or I've chosen this photo from our relationship area, as one client did recently. And I said, well, if you really want a relationship like that, go for it. But it's not what you asked me, and it's not what your heart wants. So perhaps, and then I send them to examples that I use in my teaching, perhaps this more sort of softer approach rather than this highly rampant sexual one that she sent me. I thought, if that's what you want, that's fine. But I think there was a bit of a bit of undertone in what she really wanted. Story, you know.
Lovely, thanks, Christian. So what you're doing there is you're sharing that you sit down and get them to write. Does anybody else do that? Get the client to take responsibility for what they have to do and make notes. Does anybody want to comment on that? We're now talking about the aftermath now. That's something that's come up. Handling that process, which has been flagged up as.
I usually at the end of the consultation kind of summarize key findings for them, so they can. I give them choice. They can record it. I don't record, and then I summarize, and then I send the report just for my own sake, because sometimes people come back after 6 months. So I've got that as a list of things. And so that's what I do. But yeah, I agree with Christian. If people start doing something physical, they take responsibility, at least writing some of the things. It kind of gives them, I usually give them 3 or 4 things to do straight away next day or in a week's time. So they get engagement, because some things might take ages, changing the house, changing, major kind of features. It takes time. So that's how I work.
Okay, lovely. Okay, any other feedback from your groups? We've been talking about this aspect of reports and follow-up and giving advice. Anything else came up from that list that you were reviewing of potential core or additional skills? Any thoughts while we're here as a community can throw out ideas?
Carol, you're muted.
Oh yeah. Okay, she's on.
Okay. Yeah, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Yeah, in our group, we found that clients had something to refer to, and I myself actually give them something to do on the day, and then follow up with a report. And it is useful, I've found, for clients. They've got something to refer to and to read through and to be reminded by. So it depends, I suppose, what you agree with your client.
Yeah. Anything else from your group?
The fact that we all work very differently.
Yeah. Yeah. What was highlighted when you saw the difference in how people work?
Well, one of the things was when we were looking at those key contents, Christian just opened it right up and says, well, I don't work anything like that. And what I agreed, what we did agree with, we do need a basis of knowledge to start with, and from there we grow. But Christian also mentioned that background of knowledge is still there, that he can bring up and use at any point. Is that right, Christian? Did I describe that?
Absolutely. I think you need to do the study so you've got that in the background, and it will just come up as and when it's needed. But I think the key point I was making was, being in the present moment, you'll be able to draw from that knowledge base, as well as the knowledge base in the Akashic field of stuff that you don't know and couldn't possibly know, even by being given names or events that happened that are affecting the situation. And that happens in the present moment. And I think that's a skill. But yeah, having that knowledge base, and as Gina knows, I've been studying the school since 95, 96. So, and you kind of forget, yeah, I studied that, I did do that, but I don't use it, the bar's eye, whatever. But if I needed to, I could get my compass out, Roger's one, I still use that occasionally and work that. But I wouldn't say to a client, oh, you've got baleful influence or 5 ghosts or whatever, and scare the hell out of them. You've got to be tactful with that. But I can refer to it and use it if I needed to, but I don't find I do most of the time. But
so you're emphasizing again the skill of presence. And when we were examining, the first students in the Feng Shui network, it really was a case of individually, personally putting your own house in order before you attempted to go out and put anybody else's house in order. Totally. And that personal journey is hard to say, because you could say it takes 1 year to do a finance course, but how long does it take to become a Feng Shui practitioner? There are course modules to learn, but when is it you feel that you are able to go out and be that practitioner? But we, as long as you feel that, have that trust that you'll be sent what you can cope with, that you've got resources to support you if you need to ask questions, and that you're always growing and learning from clients. I think as long as we retain that dynamic, then it gives us confidence to go out there, because we don't feel there's a point where you have to know everything and show everybody that you know everything, but showing up in presence. So I'm just going to come back to the full screen. Thanks very much, Christian. And unless anybody's got any final thoughts or comments about our discussion, I'm going to move on to our next presentation. Is any final thoughts here? And if you haven't already clicked in that form that you have, I'm sorry I didn't make that, I didn't know you could do that, but I send a little message out that you can do that. Click on the form to give us that final feedback. Yeah, well, if that's it on there for the group discussion, I'm not reading the chat, so I don't know if there's anything in there. I'm now going to close where we are there. I'm just checking the time, 10, and invite Tanya, before we go for a refreshment break. I'm going to invite Tanya. I'm find Tanya on here. Was here? Oh, great, wonderful. I'm going to bring you in, spotlight. Welcome, Tanya. Tanya is going to talk about something very modern indeed, electrosmog. That surely wasn't around several hundred years ago. And you developed this specialism, and as you say here about fast evolving, things are changing in that field. And what you do is adding to your Feng Shui practice these electromagnetic surveys. So I think we're all interested to hear your specialist knowledge and about mitigating that. So Tanya, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Actually, just to go back to what you said right at the start of today with the Feng Shui Society's anniversary, I was very much one of the beneficiaries of the work that all you guys did, and do want to thank you. I became a practicing Feng Shui consultant in 2005. I trained with the late much missed Robert Gray, and it was all set up. Everything was ready. I could simply apply to join the society, and that was me ready to go. So thank you for all of you did that groundwork, the society. And also thank you to, I would like to pay a little tribute to Robert Gray, because it was a superb course that he put together for his Feng Shui Academy. And he had the foresight to include these modern aspects of Feng Shui, which obviously weren't around 2000 years ago, as you correctly say. So of course they weren't there in the original classical Feng Shui, but things like electromagnetics, also geopathic stress, you know, the quality of modern lighting, chemical pollution, all of these Robert included in his course as very relevant parts of our environment that we absolutely need to consider with our clients. So thank you, Robert, for being ahead of the game on that one. Since then, unfortunately, I mean, I have become quite electrosensitive myself, which caused me to do some extra training. And just to show how good Robert's work was, I signed up to some a one-to-one course with an EMF expert. And, you know, we sat down at the start with all his modules. I said, oh, I already know about that. I know about that. I know about that. We actually skipped half the modules because Robert had already covered them, which is pretty impressive. So since then, I said I've also been doing EMF surveys and looking seriously at that. And on a personal level, I'm currently between homes. I had to actually leave my home in Edinburgh because after the 5G came out there, it just became too much. So I'm working on a low EMF home. Please wish me luck. So I'm orientating it today based on a consultant trying to help a client. But of course, that could be helping friends, family, anyone you work with, somebody you meet in the park. All of these people you can chat to about these issues, and you could transform their lives in the process. Also, something that links quite well with what's already been talked about today, which is that I've discovered very much with this that education is far more effective than solutions. So what really matters here is to try and get your clients to understand the issues themselves, to do their own research, to actually engage with the issues themselves. And that will save so much time. I mean, going back to Jan on this, you know, shortcuts, much quicker for them to understand the issues and make their own decisions than for you simply to fire at them some solutions, and then they make a new mistake the next day. Just in summary of what we're talking about here, obviously you think of health concerns. There are multiple studies linking electromagnetic exposure to cancer, to neurological conditions, to infertility, to, you know, they common ones that spring to mind. But I think with our Feng Shui hats on, this does go a lot further. Impacts on mental health affect behavior. So then you've got behavior of children to consider if your client has children. You've got relationships to consider if that's an issue. Even impact on pets. You know, wildlife is effective. Plants, trees, your garden is affected. So on all of these levels, there are relevant points. And I think also as Feng Shui consultants, we need to think of the spiritual implications as well. Many people, you know, reporting, you know, that it's affecting their own spiritual connectivity, and the whole essence of us as human beings is also on the line. So many levels of things to concern ourselves with here. So in regards to how you start with this with a client, the first stage, of course, is to understand that this is probably something your client doesn't want to hear about. So, you know, this is the one area where I think you break the rules if you do what your client wants. I think in this one, you actually need to do what your client needs, which is to talk about something they don't want to hear about. So I always find the first thing I'm doing is I've got one little ear open to what might be the way in, what might be the opening, where they might actually be interested in what I have to say. Interestingly, post the last few years and pandemic, a couple of new areas have come up, which I've found particularly helpful in this regard. One of them is that mistrust in what we're told has increased. So what official, you know, what we're told is officially good or bad or safe, people have increasingly started to question the lines of, you know, the mainstream authorities. And this, with regards to electromagnetics, is a very useful way in. So let's just think of the safety regulations for electromagnetics. So here it's regulated from the UK and the US and many other countries. ICNIRP is the organization that is the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. Rolls off the tongue. And they are responsible for setting the safety limits. I'm using responsible in a very loose form here because it is all far from responsible. To just give an idea of the scale of ludicrousness here, you know, when they set levels that we need to be, this is in power density, a limit of around 10 million microwatts a square meter. Biological harm has been detected as little at 2 microwatts a square meter. Slight difference between 10 million and 2. That is how extreme the differences are. How we've got to this stage, well, industry influence, of course. The way these levels are determined are nothing to do with biological health. There has been no association with biological health with regard to safety standards. It's all to do with whether an artificial large head will heat up in usually 6 minutes is the standard norm. no biology involved. And the non-thermal effect, i.e. any biological effects that don't involve things getting warmer, are simply regarded as irrelevant. They're not considered. And this standard still applies today, which is why we have these very skewed safety regulations. I was at an event a few years ago. One of the speakers, Brian Steen, had been trying to make progress with this issue with ICNIRP and had accosted a board member at an event and handed him, I think, some new, very persuasive Russian studies. Said, you know, you really need to look at this. And their response was, oh, we only look at studies in the English language. So much for international commission. And his interpretation and his description of the relationship between ICNIRP and the telecommunications industries was very much that they serve each other, and that those safety standards will not be altered unless the industry actually asks them to. To give another example of the industry influence here, you don't need to look at, for example, in the US, the 1996 Telecommunications Act actually has language in it specifically barring any objections to cell phone placement on grounds of health. That's actually in legislation way back in 1996. And we have a similar situation here in the UK, that you can't use health concerns, or it's very difficult to object to any mask being put up around you, despite literally tens of thousands of studies indicating biological harm. Martin Blank has an excellent book, Overpowered. I don't know whether Jan's able to put some suggested recommended reading there, but his book Overpowered suggests that a good $50 million was spent on lobbying to make this happen, and I think you'll find similar patterns around. I put on that thing a superb book is the Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Firstenberg. If you buy one book this year, I would suggest that. You can get it on Amazon. Arthur Firstenberg goes into huge detail of the whole history of electrics and electromagnetics and how we've ended up in this situation. Once your client has understood that the safety levels are completely irrelevant, hopefully they will start to understand that they need to do their own education on that. And as I said, in this, education is absolutely key, far more than solutions. So, I mean, I could talk so much on the issue of the safety guidance. One of the websites on that list that Jan's put up, rfinfo.co.uk, it's a relatively new website, but it's got quite a good little piece on ICNIRP. And you'll see in that you know, some of the safety standards, confusingly, in lots of different ways of measuring them, just to make sure that we're all confused and we don't have any control over it. I'll go on to another one which clients are perhaps more open to since COVID, and that is an understanding and a wish to understand how their own immune systems work and how they might be compromised. This one I found useful for anyone who's, as I said, interested in health and particularly recently, because a lot of the health mechanisms that get referred to in these studies on potential harm by electromagnetics refer not necessarily to direct causal links, but to harm to the body's own systems for protecting itself. So you know, a classic example, for example, is potential harm to the blood-brain barrier. I think Jan's piece briefly referred to some of this as well. The fluids in the brain are protected by special cells, which are referred to as the blood-brain barrier. And multiple studies have suggested that electromagnetic exposure damages these cells, allowing toxins to get into the fluid of around the brain. And this opens the door to a whole host of neurological conditions: dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, motor neuron. There are rather too many of them, and they're all rather too common these days. And I found particularly clients who are perhaps middle-aged, this is one of particular concern to them, especially if they've got elderly parents who are already affected. For younger clients, perhaps those with children, you would talk perhaps about infertility issues. This is another huge one. Again, many studies indicating harm to the systems working around the infertility, all the different protections in particular that get damaged. You don't actually need to go further than a very simple test by Olli Johansson, a Swedish, I think, scientist. He did studies on mice using simple Wi-Fi routers, and they went infertile within 5 generations. If that translates to humans, then we're talking, what, 125, 150 years? So this is clearly, this then becomes an existential problem. And just thinking, you know, in terms of, you know, some of the discussions just earlier when we're talking about the different, you know, techniques in Feng Shui, this is why we have to be very careful about sort of just, you know, picking one technique and saying, yes, we're going to put the bed here or the child there based on this system, because if we're putting them into an area where there's EMF exposure, we're opening them up to something potentially more serious. And this is where we have the interaction between the modern issues and the traditional Feng Shui. Staying with infertility, I should mention Barry Trower's work. Now, Barry Trower is not one I would send directly to a client unless you know that your client is well on the way to understanding this. He is, he worked in MI6 in the Cold War and was an expert in microwave weaponry. He has probably a better understanding than anyone of the serious nature of this. But he's now in his 80s, he's not a dynamic man, and he doesn't mince his words, and he will terrify anyone who's not ready for him. But if you have a client who's ready to really understand the seriousness, absolutely look up Barry Trower on YouTube. About a decade ago, he produced a paper specifically on the damage to girls' eggs and the genetic material within them. Simply from Wi-Fi. I think the paper was called Wi-Fi thalidomide in the making. Worth looking that up. It's, as I said, it's all rather scary what he comes up with, but basically it's how the whole female line can get damaged by prolonged exposure to basic everyday electromagnetics such as a Wi-Fi router. But as I said, save Barry for those who are ready for it. Going back to the mechanisms, I'm just going to touch on a few of them because I don't want to get bogged down in them. Interesting take on the cancer implications, which people are often aware of. One of the mechanisms is the ability of our bodies to repair DNA breakages. Apparently it happens all the time. And our bodies naturally are able to repair them, and we return to good health. There are many studies which indicate that with electromagnetic exposure, these DNA breakages no longer repair themselves. The self-repair mechanism is impaired. This results in something called micronuclei, which is sort of fragments of DNA without a function. And these are closely associated with the start process of developing cancer. So there are mechanisms plenty there. I'll mention just one more, which Martin Blank mentions in his Overpowered book, because this is one that he worked on, and that is stress proteins, as he called them, protein synthesis, which is where our bodies actually physically react to environmental stressors, which could be UV light or changes in temperature. And our bodies create these special proteins. There is evidence now that with electromagnetic radiation, that, interestingly, firstly, actually our bodies create more proteins because it recognizes the threat. But with cumulative exposure, the body normalizes it and no longer creates those proteins, thereby removing a protective mechanism from our biology. I won't say any more at this point. This really is an issue which needs to be sort of self-researched. I've included on the list that Jan put up a couple of, overview documents, quite a nice article, very well referenced, which goes into the many studies, and also the by initiative report, which is a bringing together of a lot of different studies, which is it was been updated over the years. They call it by initiative 2012, but actually it's been updated, I think, as recent as 2020. But what I found with clients is, if they can get them interested and see the relevance for themselves, they will then go away and find specific medical conditions of interest to them and look up the specific studies on them. That then will get them enlightened and make them able to make informed decisions themselves. But at that point, they really need to be encouraged to do their own research. Another topical issue, of course, with Feng Shui that I ought to mention, Jan mentioned it a lot as well in his talk, and that is sleep. As he said, having any electromagnetic devices near you in bed, or indeed around the house during the day as well, impacts the production of melatonin. A point on melatonin, it's not just issues of the circadian rhythm and the pineal gland. Also, melatonin has an effect on our ability to learn. So there are associations there which are really relevant to all things. It's not even just about sleep, but it's one that very regularly comes up in Feng Shui. And that is often a useful practical way in, is to make sure that at the very least their sleeping environment is safe, that they've switched off their phone at night, they've switched off the Wi-Fi at night, and they don't have anything close by them. I should probably just have a little bit more on some of the recommendations in the list that Jan put there. I've mentioned a few of them already. Some are particularly, health related. A couple of American ones there, the EH Trust, and I've included the Children's Health Defense, which is Robert F. Kennedy's site. That site, of course, covers many topical health issues, but what I particularly like about it is that it's including them all together, and we do need to think in terms of the bigger picture here and all the different aspects of our health and environment together, because they do interact. Also, there's a very good introductory video on that site. PowerWatch is a very old UK site that's been around a long time, but it's got relevant information very much still. On the younger end, we've got a couple of Americans, Nick Pino, very worthwhile signing up to. He does regular blogs, regular podcasts, and is very much on the button with any new solutions coming up. And if you have any clients who really need a low EMF environment, I recommend Jeremy Johnson, his website, emfanalysis.com. He's exceptionally good at coming up with practical solutions for low EMF environments. He's an engineer to start with. So he and Nick Pinnow are good, young, very helpful, very practical people to look to. An older one is Erica Mallory Blythe. I mentioned her because she's given some excellent speeches in the past, and her physician site Fire has some useful resources. So do have a look through those at your leisure, and if you find ones which are helpful to clients, then of course pass those on. A point of the just want to mention with the bio-initiative reports, in that list sort of several thousand, I think about 988 of them are peer reviewed. It's very difficult to get funding these days for this sort of research, and difficult to get them peer reviewed. So actually 988 is quite a lot. Also worth mentioning that the bio-initiative report doesn't include literally tens of thousands of studies by military departments of defense, which also show biological effects of electromagnetics. This is where Barry Trower knows his stuff, because that's where he was coming from. I'll move on to talking a bit more about solutions. As I said, while education is key, you do need to have some solutions up your sleeve. But of course, the biggest solution, the cheapest solution, is avoidance, or rather minimizing exposure, which is the best we can do these days, which does come back to education, because you need your client to be making those decisions. I found that most clients have an idea of electromagnetics in terms of electromagnetic fields, that is to say, low frequency fields, which come from electrical appliances, and people think also of pylons. Those are low frequency fields. The thing about the fields is they have a limited area, and they decline with space. And I found when I first went on to, started advertising, doing EMF surveys, at least every other client was asking about pylons and substations. And I've only once found a really problematic one. And that was literally where the pylon was in the back garden and the cables were running over the house. On that occasion, the magnetic fields in particular were just impossible, unlivable with, really not fit for human habitation. Although the client wanted to actually sell the house, so wanted me to put in a report that it was within the safety guidelines, which I very reluctantly did, because it was, of course, well within the safety guidelines, just absolutely ridiculously high. But normally substations are not a problem, and pylons, unless they're really, really close, are actually okay. What is the problem is the radio frequency radiation, and this is where our clients need the help understanding the difference. So this is where we're into microwave frequencies, and with 5G millimeter frequency, which are higher bands. I often find I actually need to actually explain that if you have one device and another device, and they're both wireless, and they need to communicate with each other, they need to radiate in all directions in order to find the other thing, because they don't know it's there and they don't know where it is. And the electromagnetic radiation that's used for this needs to be able to travel distance, it needs to be able to travel through walls and ceilings, and it needs to be able to carry a significant amount of data. So this is why we have increasing problems. It's not just the increasing number of devices which are wireless, it's the increased power needed and the increased frequencies. in order to carry more and more data. Now, it's not actually a linear progression that the higher the frequency, the higher the health risks, or that the higher the power, even the higher the health risk, but that is the general trend. So even though there will be anomalies in the way, this is to do with resonances, basically we are talking it getting worse. And one of the problems with higher frequency, one of the key problems with the millimeter wave frequencies that we've now got with 5G is A, we can't cheaply measure it or easily measure it, and B, it's very difficult to shield. So, I mean, there has been some questioning about whether these higher frequencies are actually in use. If you look at the specifications from satellite 5G internet, that answers the question that they are. The bands that Ofcom have given, it's about 26 to 30 gigahertz, which is beyond what we can easily measure, as I say, shield. And the specifications show that that is the frequencies in use, and also the frequencies around the receiving dishes, unfortunately, are also in the millimeter wave bands, a bit lower, perhaps 18 to 20. And there is scope for increasing those frequencies, with 60 gigahertz being the one that people are most concerned about, because that seems to resonate with the lungs and potential issues of oxygen, getting oxygen. So yes, the millimeter wave are a concern, but at the same time, you know, people are coming up with solutions, particularly shielding. So, you know, there is a lot of work being done on mitigating it. So before I just I can dive straight into the shielding, but I'll first talk a little bit about the meter issues. On rfinfo.co.uk, I saw that it was mentioned there, a meter that came out recently, which does claim to be able to measure this, and it's affordable in that it's only about £1,000, which makes it affordable in this context. However, I got a no for it and didn't buy it, and I've since heard from others, yeah, you're probably right. So I'm afraid it might not be the sort of wonder meter that everybody thought it was, but by all means, you know, look into it, ask around, because the jury is still out there. So we've got to rely more on our own, well, people like me who are canaries who can actually feel it, and otherwise, you know, dowsing and, you know, just use. You can also look at maps, of course. I've included a map on, you know, a lot of 5G providers will also provide maps of where 5G has been rolled out, but it's a little sort of non-specific. But there is no doubt that it is also coming from satellites. So I mentioned shielding. I would only go down the shielding route if your client is actually up for living in a low EMF environment. There's absolutely no point shielding a building and then using a smartphone inside it, because the electromagnetics will bounce around inside. So this is only for those who really want to create a very sort of healthy low EMF environment. Now, most of the products that I use come from a company called EMF Clothing and Shielding. They're not the cheapest, but their products are very, very well, very thoroughly tested, and can be relied on. I'll start with, I mean, it's with the name, with the clothing. I use this hat here, which I use all the time, is one of theirs. Their range is called LeBlanc, and it works. The key to good clothing is a high silver content, and you also have to look at how the silver, what type of silver. You know, they can sometimes add on nano silver, which apparently comes off very easily. The EMF clothing is got a woven material to it, but that means it uses more silver and it's more expensive. The reason why the silver is good is it's conductive, which means that any static fields coming off it will then be conducted away, which is important. You don't want that around your body. So protective clothing needs to be conductive. For shielding materials, I'll mention paint, which is an interesting one because there seems to be some development there. For a long time, there was a paint called Y-Shield, which was the market leader, and indeed EMF Clothing and Shielding was, I think, the UK's biggest retailer of it. So I was interested to see, look, you've stopped stocking it. Apparently, there have been some serious problems with the actual effectiveness of it, and also it doesn't shield the new higher frequencies. Also, there are shelf life issues which are now needing to be considered, because where we have supply chain disruptions, you can't risk having something with, in the case of Y-Shield, only about a 6-month shelf life. So there is, fortunately, there is a new paint, a powdered paint called Turtle, spelled Turtal. I actually used it in my front porch in Edinburgh before I left. It works. You've got to follow the instructions, which I didn't initially, but it really works. It's because it's a powder, it has an excellent shelf life. You only mix it when you actually use it, and it does shield these high frequencies. And I gather that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually has it on his own house, so I think that's a pretty good recommendation. So that's quite a user-friendly product if the client is interested in shielding. There is also wallpaper, perhaps less user-friendly. I use this again myself in Edinburgh, and when 5G first hit my house, I used it as my emergency shielding. I know it works because I would start to have symptoms when it fell down, which tells you the other thing. It's actually quite difficult unless you have a really good professional job to put it up well so that it stays. It's very metallic. It's got nickel on it. It's another LeBlanc product, I think, but it does really work against the higher frequencies. And another material, there's a lovely material called Silver Super Shield, which it's another silver product, and now that's a very fine fabric, which I actually have currently as a bed canopy. And again, it actually really works to shield these millimeter waves in the way that very few other materials, fabrics do. I got quite a complicated explanation for why it's so effective. It's something to do with how it's woven and how it's created, and the very sort of fine mesh. The only problem with that is it is expensive. So, you know, again, your clients need to be committed to something like that if they're going to go for it. Speaking of they need to be committed to it, I'll mention at this point that when clients become serious, interested in this, you actually need to help them on other grounds, such as a sense of abundance. I found that one of the big blockages to clients engaging in a process of this is a lack of a feeling of abundance. So that takes us back to, more regular Feng Shui territory. That even if you're just suggesting to your client that they perhaps should, lose the electric blanket because that's creating fields around their beds at night, and they'll say, yeah, but I spent good money on that electric blanket, I don't want to let it go. Or they've just bought a lovely new wireless smart speaker and it cost them a lot of money, they don't want to let it go. So I found that this comes up a lot, and so you if you're helping them, actually need to help them with the whole abundance energetic as well, if they're going to see this through. And I think of it at this point because, as mentioned, some of these shielding products, if they go down that route, are very expensive. So you have to believe that this is a good economy, because you are protecting yourself, you're protecting your health, you're protecting your well-being, you're protecting your children, your relationships. And if you see it in that way, you're actually protecting your own ability to function and earn a living and get more money in. And so the money then comes around again, but it needs to start with a sense of abundance.
As we're coming to our time now, do you have a resource? Do you have a website that people can go to? Do you have a resource where you've mentioned some books, you mentioned some solutions? Do you have anything that people could find out more about?
I currently, my website needs some serious updating, but there's an email address for me on that list. Tanya Fox at cantab.net will find me. And you're welcome to contact me, and I will, and as soon as I've got the website up and running again, I can share that. But in the meantime, I'm very happy to answer questions. Yes, I've just seen the time. Sorry, I've realised I've gone.
If you or Jan want to put your email address in the chat, and then we've got that. Does anybody have a question now that they want to ask on that? Because that's we've got the big picture, and then the idea of having this conversation inside the consultation. I certainly, you know if anybody remembers the name Roger Coghill, he did research in the early 90s. He was one of the rare individuals who was a scientist who was individually funded. As you point out, Tanya, you can't get funding for things that go against the common grain. Because you're damaging commercial self-interest, which was we had Dr. Hans Hertel come and speak in my school about what microwave ovens do. You know, that's what we're doing to our food, never mind what you've been talking about around us. And I certainly, for the last 25 plus years, have slept on a bed with magnets in and had an infrared quilt and use an infrared helmet now. So we've got new technologies, haven't we, which are healing, as well as these new technologies coming in, harming us. So our awareness in this definitely needs to expand. Anybody here who's hearing this information for the first time, or are you kind of learning more about this field? And Tanya, you've certainly presented the idea that it's growing, and we need to get our heads around it more, don't we?
We do. I mean, unfortunately, as you know, as I said, when you get to the scarier end of it, it does become you realize this actually is an existential threat. You know, but it is one where every little counts. You know, I've heard clients say, "Oh, it's all around us. You know, what difference does it make?" Well, the answer is because it's all around us, and because the accumulation of it all is now pushing us to, if you like, the toxic load, as I often call it, is now overflowing. We need to act now in order to reduce that load. You know, our bodies are amazing. They can cope with a lot, but because there is so much going on, we need to help them. That there is one thing. I was actually about to get on to the last solution thing, which was the end of the talk, which I will. It's mentioned on that list there with a website called Pulsing Earth, and that's the product that I use for energetic protection. So that is the other side to this, of course, is recognizing that the antidote energetically to electromagnetics is the natural frequencies, the frequencies, you know, the spiritual frequencies, the natural frequencies, and the LifeSpace Pro products is one that I've been involved with in the testing front for well over a decade. It's now marketed in Germany, but there is a small stock in the UK. It's in my mother's spare room, so I can actually lay hands on the remaining UK stock post Brexit if anybody is interested. I know these work because I take them everywhere I go. I plug them in to every consultation. And if I forget to put them back in when I get home, I really feel the difference.
Want to pop that website in the chat, and then we've got that.
Yeah, it's on. I think it's on the list which Jan put up.
Okay.
I had to do a Google Translate of it because it's in German.
Okay.
But you know, there are many energetic products out there, of course, and you know, we need to be discerning. But that's the one that I use, which makes a difference. And when you've got an understanding of the power of nature, that can help to, you know, with just everyday practices like the grounding, you know, putting your bare feet on the ground, on the grass, all these things help as well. And the other thing I would mention, just from a Feng Shui point of view, is oh, happy to help with the question. Thank you very much, Becky. From a Feng Shui point of view, is, you know, let's de-emphasize all of these devices in our client's home. Let's not do it so the first thing you see when you walk into the kitchen is the chargers hanging out to the wall, so that we don't give pride of place to the latest gadget. Jan was talking about, you know, books being wonderful. Let's have books, physical paper books, as you know, the first thing you see when you walk into a room, you know, and not the smart speakers. So we can, even just on that level, we can help to sort of shift the focus and help people to get the balance right.
And perhaps, as you write there, perhaps everybody doesn't realise that if you've got a nice Kindle, reading a Kindle late at night is going to subject you and your face and your hands to electromagnetic fields, whereas a book wouldn't. So
yeah.
Again, there are some simple things that can be done in our lifestyle choices once we're made aware of these implications, even if we don't fully understand the big picture. Does anybody want to ask Tanya a question now? Or you might think of one and put in the chat later. Does anybody want to ask Tanya a question? It's a great presentation, Tanya. You've given us a great overview, and the picture that's happening, the evolution of that, the acceleration of it, and the need for us to come up with practical things that we can, for ourselves and for our clients. Any other comments? Well, Tanya, thank you. That was great. We're moving into a break now, and the time here on my iPhone is 5 to the hour. So I'm going to invite people back at, we've got Zhongyan Cheng giving us a presentation on geography, and Jan's going to introduce him. So we got that down as starting as 1:15. Can you all do a 25-minute lunch break, 25-minute break, and get back at 20 past the hour, whatever hour you have? See you then, and go and get some nourishment and come back with another blank piece of paper to make notes. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well done, Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pause.
I'm happy to stick around if anybody wants.
Great
to.
idea.
Yeah,
I'll leave it on in case somebody wants to.
Tanya, I wanted to ask you, do you use sacred geometry much? And
yes,
frequency?
yes, and in fact, the devices I mentioned, the LifeSpace Pro, use a lot of sacred geometry that is incorporated in them. Very. This is a wonderful way into those sort of really deep primal and energetics. There was a lot of sacred geometry included in the development of those products.
Because for me, like space clearing, it's not about clearing what's in the space. It's actually coming in, and geopathic stress coming into resonance with something that is so-called harmful, actually neutralizes the effect on our body, which is at the end of the day what we want.
Absolutely. And there's a key word you said there, which is resonance. And in fact, the company that makes these devices that I use, there's a sort of egg that you can do on a computer, and then there's a plug-in device. It's called Resonance Sciences. It's my brother that was behind a lot of the development, which is why I was involved with a lot of testing. And since he's moved overseas, as I said, that's why I said, look, I'll hold on to a stock in the UK, you know, Brexit. But resonance is absolutely what it's all about. It's how things resonate in nature, the different frequencies. And it's not just one frequency, it's multiple frequencies that effectively need to be channeled, because you can't sort of necessarily identify.
Absolutely, yeah. And this comes back again to the whole thing of intuition and present moment, and, you know, like the Rife frequencies, there are thousands of them, you know, and those kind of things that cure whatever. And it can be very scientific, but also the intuition, the dowsing will actually tell you which frequency to use to actually counterbalance or neutralize a damaging effect. I remember working with Richard Cratemore down on his land, and he had a pylon, and people were dowsing, you know, the horrendous effect, you know, with the rods, and I can replicate it. And so this is what everyone was getting. and I threw a sacred geometry protective structure around it, and everyone's rods just zeroed. Now, the geopathic is still there and the EMFs are still there, but they weren't affecting the people because I call it a shield, it's a program shield, changed the frequencies that then didn't harm the people. So if people can learn to do that, yes, if you need a device or that helps you or kicks it off, great. But again, it comes down to this, what responsibility am I going to take for doing the work, understanding the sacred geometry? It could even be a piece of music like Mozart, and I use that a lot. So you play Mozart, heart connected, and if you're connected to the heart, if we love, so if I've got my phone and I love it, I know it's not going to harm me. And I apply that to everything.
Classical music is a very important reference there as well. I mean, part of the develop of these things, which I was, as I said, you know, helping with, was an understanding of the energetics of certain classical composers, Bach in particular, but also Mozart, and how you know, these natural frequencies that you can get from beautifully constructed music can go to a much deeper part of us energetically and help strengthen us energetically.
And quite a few of those composers use the golden mean harmonic in there.
They do,
And is that heart harmonic? So this is another.
But there's a product I've not mentioned, which I used just before I did this talk. It's an actual essence spray, which uses the music of the essence of the music of J.S. Bach in order to create an electro stress relief spray, and it really works. It's centering. It's you know, it's wonderful. That one's also fallen foul of sort of post-Brexit getting. I've just recently managed finally to stock up with it again. But you know, it's amazing the energetics that can come off these things if we can tune ourselves. I mean, that is my hope, is that over time we can train ourselves to have enough resilience to be able to cope with what's coming. So it's only going to get worse, so we need to get stronger. You know, that is.
Just to share, some people may know, I'm helping to design a healing center on a Greek island from scratch. And you know, by putting the sacred geometry and getting the geomancy right, the earth energies, the elementals, and you know, the feng shui, the orientation, you know, all the basics. But then the sacred geometry itself sets it up for natural, let's say protection, but natural resonance. And if you link that to cosmic resonance, you know, you're sort of like halfway there, and the rest is up to the people, you know. But brilliant.
Well,
if I can just add something. So the science behind it is very simple, because, you know, in an environment where your brain works better, is in kind of alpha state, naturally you'll be protected yourself because your resilience will be strong. So whether it's music or sacred geometry or Schumann resonance or grounding or just a belief help you. So, you know, you can use those different things that, you know, that work for you.
Yeah, lovely.
Well, this is, I mean, we're in our lunch break, but I am still recording because this is useful information. But I think it gives us you know, we can move on and do another presentation in our next offering of the detail of the modern technologies, just like I mentioned, the infrared helmet, what I sleep on, your spray, the shapes, you know, in the healthy home. We've got a room where the lighting is arranged in a sacred geometry. You know, I think we can share these because this is a way in, and I do actually think as humanity we are adapting ourselves, and our diet, you know, we haven't even talked about diet and things you can have and how you can clear pollution out of your system. So I think this is a great conversation to have in the future. So Tanya, thank you for the groundwork in that. That was brilliant, and your contributions. And I'm now gonna I don't want to stop you talking, but I'm going to put us on pause. The lunch break.
Sure.
Thanks, Tanya.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, thank you. So our next speaker is Chang. And he's based in Toronto, so thank you for waking up so early. It's after 8 o'clock in your time zone. And he's going to talk about geography from all the subjects. Obviously, you know, Feng Shui is part, you know, it's a big concept, context, geography. And Chang's got a great presentation with some slides and case studies. So welcome, Chang. Thank you very much. So over to you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the invite. Now I'm going to share the, oh wait, I need a permission to share the screen.
Yeah, coming up. Yeah, and you have to do that. I can't make him a co-host.
Oh, yes, I'm doing it. Okay, now it's done. So it should work now.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm sure you guys can see my slides now.
Yes.
Okay, so hi everyone. So my name is Zhong Yan, and I'm from Taiwan, and I'm now pursuing a master's in geography at Toronto. So Feng Shui is not my current research topic, but since I was nurtured in an environment with lots of Feng Shui knowledge, so I think you guys might be interested in my personal experience. My topic today is why would Feng Shui consultants care about geography? My intent is to be provocative, to push you guys think that in your career, have you ever considered yourself to be a geographer? So by discussing the intimate relationship between Feng Shui and geography, I hope to let you guys know that to prove the efficacy of Feng Shui, it is not necessary to quantify it or do experiments. When we are moving the objects or like furniture in the room, we are already altering people's relationship with the space, which cannot be fully captured by numbers and figures, but can be captured if we adopt the perspective of a geographer. So geography is pronounced Dili in Mandarin. Before the Western concept of geography was imported to China during the Qing Dynasty, the Feng Shui we know now was commonly referred to as Dili. And as you guys probably know, in Chinese, one word could have multiple meanings. So in ancient China, Dili, besides being the synonym of Feng Shui, could also refer to the topography of a place. So then you can understand why observing the topography of a place is so important for Feng Shui consultants. Nowadays in China, Taiwan, and Japan, Dili, this besides referring to the Western concept of geography, is still being used to refer to Feng Shui. Now we know that Feng Shui and geography are inseparable concepts. And we also know that topography is important for Feng Shui assessment, right? And you might also know that like geographers are interested in the study of topography. In fact, in geography, there are two main subdisciplines. One is physical geography, which studies the topography of a place, including glaciers, volcanoes, rivers, and mountains. Another subdiscipline is human geography, which studies culture, city life, demographics, economic activities, and politics. Why I'm bringing this up is to show that Feng Shui practitioners, besides being concerned about the physical geography or the topography of a place, are also concerned about human geography, namely humans' well-being and humans' relationship with their houses. You guys might not be aware, but from a geographer's perspective, when you are having a meeting or consultation with your clients, you are not just providing them with tips and tricks. Rather, we think that you are describing the physical geography and studying the human geography of a place. This might sound a bit vague and abstract, so let me use my personal experience to tell you why Feng Shui is of concern to geographers. So in my family, my mother is a Feng Shui enthusiast. She already had some foundational Feng Shui knowledge due to her upbringing. And in fact, many families in Taiwan will pass down Feng Shui knowledge orally. She never read Feng Shui books or attended like consultant training courses. Her main source of knowledge comes from social media posts and TV shows like what is showed on the slides. Yeah, there are like many TV shows related to Feng Shui or fortune telling, astrology in Taiwan. And so the fact that she acquires Feng Shui knowledge from a variety of sources reflects that learning Feng Shui is a decentralized process in Taiwan. For example, there are plenty of Feng Shui consultants in Taiwan, but they do not establish a nonprofit like Feng Shui Society to accredit qualified consultants. Therefore, it is difficult to tell you guys the exact number of consultants in Taiwan, since everyone can claim to be one. The lack of third-party accreditation implies that most clients can tell whether the advice given by consultants is effective or not, which further strengthens my argument that Feng Shui knowledge is accessible to all society members rather than controlled by a few people in Taiwan. The reason why most people have basic knowledge of Feng Shui is because there are so many resources over there, such as the TV shows and the social media posts I mentioned, and news articles, books, knowledge passed on by elderly people, and the information exchanged in daily conversations with friends. The abundance of resources is due to a long-standing tradition of practicing Feng Shui in Taiwan. People have been choosing the location of their tombs and decorating houses based on Feng Shui principles for hundreds of years. From the anecdotes I shared, you can see that my mom and I's Feng Shui learning process is inherently spatial. We learn from various sources at different locations. Sometimes we look at the floor plans shown on TV shows, while during other times we look at the buildings and tombs during our trips. Because geographers care about how spatial knowledge is formed, my mom and I and all the Feng Shui enthusiasts around the world are potential research participants for geographers. Geographers, we are less interested in what kind of Feng Shui practice is the most correct or the most authentic. Rather, we are more interested in how such practice is learned and what impact it has on the consultants and their clients. Furthermore, geographers do not care whether the consultants receive formal training or not. Any kind of environmental or spatial knowledge is valid. Therefore, whether you are an accredited consultant or simply an enthusiast, your knowledge will be respected by a geographer. Next, I'll discuss what my mother did to our family's apartment. So the apartment is situated in the southern part of the Taipei Basin, as indicated by this red dot. Okay, Taipei Basin is where the capital city of Taiwan, Taipei, is located. Basin refers to a relatively flat area surrounded by hills. Okay, so let us zoom in. The red arrow here is pointing towards my home. My home is on the first floor of an apartment complex. Before I proceed, let me highlight how useful Google Map is. The street view function, the satellite view, and the 3D function are really useful when doing virtual consultation. You might also know that maps are the bread and butter of geographers. So when you are analyzing the information of maps, you're essentially a geographer. Back to the topic, the top of the picture is pointing towards the north. We can see that there is a pond here in front of the apartment complex. In Feng Shui, having bodies of water in front of homes tend to be a plus because they can help accumulate wealth. There's another feature here that might have Feng Shui implications, the semicircular road that is surrounding the apartment I live in. This sounds like a great thing, right? The Feng Shui tells us that having a semicircular road or river channels around the house can help retain wealth. However, my mom does not think this theory applies here because the road surrounds the back of the apartment complex rather than the front of the apartment complex. Some of you guys might disagree with her. However, as I mentioned earlier, from a geographer's point of view, whether certain Feng Shui belief is right or wrong is not that important. Rather, what matters is what effect that certain belief has on people's relationship with their surroundings. So my mom is at peace with not living in a place where the front door faces the semicircular road, which is a valid opinion that needs to be respected. Okay, in this image, we are looking towards the east. So this is the same place, but from a different direction. It is clearer that the apartment complex is situated on a small hill. I don't know if you guys can see it, but if the image is not clear, then the hill should be more obvious from this perspective. So you can see the road is going up, you know, there is a small hill over here. Okay, why is the hill relevant to Feng Shui? Do you see the house that the yellow arrow is pointing at? This one. This is not a regular house. That is the ancestral shrine of the Zhang family. Zhang family used to be one of the biggest families in the area I lived in. If you look closely, you can see that the hill is at the back of the ancestral shrine. In Feng Shui, having the hill at the back of the house is a good thing. The ancestral shrine was built about like 100 years ago. From the choice of location, we can see that Feng Shui has always been a part of Taiwanese people's life. Compared to the ancestral shrine that has a hill behind it, my apartment complex here is on the top of the hill and has nothing behind it. This is not good from a Feng Shui perspective. However, this can be fixed. Let's turn to the next image. This is also the same location facing south. Okay, so do you see the house that the yellow arrow is pointing at? This is Zhang family's family mansion. Okay, so it's different from the ancestral shrine, but owned by the same family. So, and in Chinese, this is called Sanhe Yuan, particular type of building. Yeah. It is also on the top of the hill, besides the apartment complex that I live in. But the family planted some trees behind the mansion. So now the mansion has some backing behind them. The problem of having no hills behind the building is fixed. But so what is behind the apartment complex next to the mansion where I live at? Let us zoom in. From this image, you can see that at the back of the apartment complex, there is a retaining wall. Then under the wall, there is a road. So there is no backing for my apartment. What I did so far is analyzing the physical geography, the topography of a place through maps. If you guys have done this, then congratulations, you're a geographer. Next, I'm going to zoom in to a smaller scale, to the floor plan of my family's apartment. Starting from here, more human factors are involved. So we can say that we are now dealing with the human geography aspect of Feng Shui. One thing I want to highlight is the black line over here. In real life, it is actually a piece of colored glass. Why is this relevant to Feng Shui? So one basic Feng Shui principle is that when you open the door of a house, the kitchen should not be seen. The kitchen is over here. The reason is that kitchen is considered the vault of a family, where the family stores money. So it should not be easily seen by strangers. Therefore, my parents asked the interior designer to erect this colored glass to obstruct the view. Before I proceed, let me remind you that the stars that I put on the floor plan represent the Feng Shui objects and decorations in the apartment, which are all installed by my mother, an amateur Feng Shui enthusiast. Okay, the first one is the red mat over here in front of the front door of our apartment in this location. Although we live on the first floor, okay, we still need to take around like 3 steps down the stairs to reach the ground. According to my mom, having stairs that goes downward in front of a door could cause the family's wealth to leak. Therefore, the red mat is put here to prevent wealth from leaking. You guys probably know that red represents good fortune in Chinese culture, so that's why the red mat has such function. Now let us enter the front door. The first thing you will see is the lamp in front of the colored glass over here that I spoke of earlier. My mom argues that putting a lamp in the entrance can attract people that are helpful to us. In Mandarin, these kind of people are called 贵人. 贵人 will introduce financial job and networking opportunities to us. Yeah. When we go further into the living room, we will see this object on top of the platform near the wall. This object is an animal sculpture called Pi Shou, a Chinese mythical hybrid creature that resembles lions with wings. Pi Shou is regarded as an auspicious creature that possesses mythical powers capable of drawing wealth from all directions. The position of this animal sculpture also matters. So according to my mom, it has to be put at a 45-degree angle relative to the front door. Okay, 45-degree corresponds to the northwest direction. You can see that this floor plan is facing north, which is a place where a family's wealth is accumulated. Right next to the Pi Shou is the amethyst geode. Okay, you might be familiar with this thing. So this is also at roughly 45-degree angle relative to the front door, where all the wealth is concentrated. As many of you know, the function of the amethyst geode is to attract and accumulate wealth. The lights here, you can see here near the geode, can give the geode more energy, making it perform better. Yeah, according to my mom. Okay, so next is the main bedroom. There is one nightstand on the left and right side of the bed respectively, and on each nightstand there is a lamp. So first, why are nightstands and lamps needed? So according to Purple Star Astrology, 紫微斗数, okay, there are 6 lucky stars, and 2 of them are called 左辅 and 右弼. Okay, this is in Chinese. So 左 means left, 右 means right, and 辅 and 弼, these 2 letters both means help or assist. The reason why there is a nightstand and a lamp on the left side and right side of the bed is to occupy the position of these 2 lucky stars, 左辅 and 右弼. These 2 stars will then attract 贵人 to your life. As I mentioned earlier, 贵人 will introduce financial job and networking opportunities to us. And second, the second feature is why can't the bed touch the wall on the left side and the right side of the room? So according to my mom, this is due to a Chinese idiom called 左右逢源. Over here, literally 左右逢源 means you can find water on your left side and right side. So in daily conversation, this idiom is used to describe that a person is skillful and has an extensive network. Therefore, when such a person is assigned a difficult task, they are able to complete it without causing much trouble or conflict. So back to the picture. Since the bat does not touch the wall on either side of the room, there is space between the bat and the wall that allows air to flow through, so that people sleeping on the bat will acquire the ability of 左右逢源. Okay. You might be a bit confused about what I just said, and this is completely normal because Feng Shui consultants in Chinese-speaking countries use a lot of idioms to describe their work, and the meaning of these idioms is easily lost in translation. Not only that, but practicing Feng Shui requires interdisciplinary knowledge. So for example, you might not that familiar with purple star astrology if you only focus on the Feng Shui tips themselves. To be honest, like my mom does not know much about Feng Shui, purple star astrology. When she decorates the bedroom, she simply follows a guideline provided by the TV shows or social media posts. But it is this unexpected combination of spatial knowledge that makes her practice of interest to geographers like me. Now let's go to the kitchen. Oh, so at the kitchen door, there is a fridge. Okay, why is the fridge here? According to my mom, the position of the fridge depends on the mother's Chinese zodiac sign. Since my mother's Chinese zodiac sign is monkey, the fridge has to face east. Indeed, you can see the fridge facing east on the floor plan. The position of the fridge is important because fridge is considered to be a family's vault. Putting a fridge in appropriate position can help the family accumulate wealth faster. My mother put a spring couplet, as you can see here, on the fridge door. So this is also to help accelerate the accumulation process. The Chinese words on the spring couplet is 日进斗金, which is a Chinese idiom that means earning lots of money every day. Another feature in this picture with Feng Shui implication is the curtain at the kitchen door, as you can see behind the fridge. So as I mentioned earlier, the kitchen should be hidden from people's view when they enter the house. Since kitchen is the family's fault, you never show your fault to strangers, right? Therefore, to make sure the kitchen cannot be seen directly, my mother put a curtain at the kitchen door. Yeah. The next object is inside the kitchen. To be precise, the objects are above the stove. And let me explain why these objects are needed here first. Then I will introduce what these objects are. Above the stove, there is a beam. It's not that obvious in this picture, but you can see it over here. So in Feng Shui, having a beam above the stove is a bad sign. These two animal sculptures here called Qiling can help defeat the evil spirit in this area. Qiling is the mythical creature in ancient China. It is said to arrive when world peace is achieved or when a legendary person is born. Therefore, Qiling is regarded as a sign of good luck. This is why they can defeat the evil spirit in this area. So I have introduced all the objects in my home with Feng Shui implications. My mom claims that these objects are effective, but how do other people in my family feel? My father, my younger brother, and I are all familiar with the functions of these objects, but do we feel that our life has improved? To be honest, the short answer is no. From a Feng Shui consultant's perspective, you might want to, for example, add more objects or adjust the position of certain objects to improve the effectiveness. However, from the geographer's perspective, I'm not in a hurry to find a solution. I frame this ineffectiveness not as a failure of my mom's practice, but as a clash between different spatial knowledge. My mom's spatial knowledge is deeply influenced by Feng Shui. On the other hand, other family members in my family believe in the so-called scientific or secular spatial knowledge. I've observed there's a tendency among Feng Shui practitioners to prove the scientific value of Feng Shui to convince non-believers. However, as a geographer, I respect these efforts, but I find it more important to find common ground between practitioners and clients without resorting to scientific language. So what is common ground here? I think it is taste. Taste can be seen from many things, such as the color of the room, the interior design, and furniture. The taste that my mom has is a more traditional, more maximalist one, which is exemplified by her use of animal sculptures and huge amethyst jewel. Let me show you the Feng Shui consultants that have similar tastes as my mom's. So this is a Facebook fan page owned by a really popular, really famous Feng Shui consultant in Taiwan. So let's look at a Facebook fan page owned by him. What do you notice? You see family shrines over here, and you also see lots of red color. You also see amateurish photo editing skills, such as the stickers that are used to cover the client's faces. The red clothing you see here are actually the red underwears sold by the consultant, who claims that wearing it can bring good luck. But the red underwear, as you can see, is not well designed. You know, like it's kind of old-fashioned. The Facebook post here in Chinese describes how the family was sick before, but after the consultant's intervention, they all felt better. So these tear-jerking stories, plus the features I mentioned, all cater to the taste of an older audience like my mom's. Therefore, sometimes people's reluctance to accept Feng Shui is not due to disbelief, but it's due to the difference in taste. Next, I'll discuss the kind of Feng Shui consultation that caters to younger people's taste. The man on the left is a Feng Shui consultant. So besides teaching Feng Shui knowledge on his YouTube channel, I put a QR code here, however, it's in Chinese. He also frequently collaborates with other YouTubers to help assess their homes. For example, the woman on the right is known for teaching English on her YouTube channel. Her target audience is students and young professionals in their 20s. So by collaborating with this YouTuber, the consultant on the left is able to draw young audience to his channel. You can see that the video is professionally edited, and the interior design of the YouTuber's apartment is more modern and stylish than the rooms we see on the Facebook page earlier. I'm sure you guys have seen similar phenomena in the West where Feng Shui consultants, use TikTok to advertise their service or brand their service as a spiritual experience or fashionable makeover to cater to the taste of a younger audience. I bring out a case in Taiwan just to show that this is a universal trend and consultants can take advantage of it. More and more people claim that, they are spiritual but not religious. So Feng Shui as a belief system that straddles the line between religion and self-help technique has great chance to expand its popularity. Of course, there is still need for traditional Feng Shui that focuses on, for example, buying lots of objects, putting some really huge, geode in houses. But my point is that to help clients avoid conflicts, with their family, it is important to find common ground between each person's taste. So to wrap up my presentation, I have like 5 takeaways. So I have introduced the first 4. So I will not repeat again the first 4 over here. It's kind of like a recap of my presentation. As for the 5th one over here, you guys might know that qi is an important concept in Feng Shui. It can be translated, like for example, as energy, spirit, or atmosphere. My mom put all these objects in her home to accumulate good qi and expel bad qi. Accumulating good qi can help improve health, wealth, and interpersonal relationships. Geographers recently, however, I feel that this aspect, the aspect of atmosphere and qi, is underutilized in Feng Shui by Feng Shui consultants, and is where practitioners can learn from geographers. Geographers recently have shown great interest towards people's relationship atmosphere. Atmosphere in this context includes both the atmosphere we breathe in and out, and also the atmosphere that makes people feel certain emotions. Geographers explore how people form their sense of place and spatial knowledge through immersing themselves in atmospheres, either knowingly or unknowingly. Feng Shui practitioners, I mean, you guys probably understand the importance of qi and atmosphere too, but you guys seldom emphasize its role during consultations. For example, my mom only focuses on the technical aspect of Feng Shui practices when she introduces them to me, such as the position and the angle of certain furniture, the name of the practice, and what outcome that practice will bring. I was never moved by this kind of technical language. The objects seem isolated from me, and they do not seem to fit into the style of my home. I argue that by highlighting the concept of qi and atmospheres during consultations, clients will find it easier to connect to the proposed changes to their house, and consultants will align their proposed changes with the original style of the house better. First-hand experience with the house, with a change in atmosphere is usually more convincing than words. Okay, so thank you for listening. I welcome any questions and comments. And okay, so I see a comment from college. So your mom's home is inside a bulb, but is it on a slope? Yeah, inside slope is good. Okay, so So let me get back to the picture here. Okay, so yeah, indeed, the apartment is inside a bowl, and it is not necessarily on a slope. I would say it is on a flat area on the hill. Of course, the topography of the hill has been altered when the apartment complex was built. Yeah. But my point is that, yeah, of course, you know, some practitioners believe that inside a bowl means, you know, it's a good thing. But to my mom, I mean, as an amateur Feng Shui enthusiast, she doesn't believe that. She also knows the concept of bowl, but she thinks, you know, when you look through the front door, you have to be able to see that bowl in order to be effective. If you're opening door and you see, you know, other apartment complex or simply see a straight road, then that bowl doesn't have has an effect on you. And also, like, river channels, of course, is more effective than regular roads. Yeah. Okay, so another comment here. So, but in the study of classical items and letters or writing don't really have any effect on Feng Shui residence house. The position of the headboard is more affected by the flying star combo that resides there. The cooker is most often have extractor fans overhead. Again, the position and location of the cooker is the most important factor. Again, very interesting view of Feng Shui. All the Feng Shui comes from the physical geography of the area. Environment, building, time, and people. I'm studying Feng Shui and Chinese metaphysics. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So the emphasis here is that, you know, typically there might be a separation between the outdoor environment and also the items indoors. Yeah, I understand that, you know, like what Colette mentioned here, the position of the headboard as exemplified by this picture, you know, is more effective of a flying star combo that resides here. Indeed, like I mentioned, you know, no matter it is purple star astrology or flying star combo, you know, like it can be regarded as a separate subject, separate discipline from Feng Shui. But my point is that, you know, like in terms of my mom and I's Feng Shui learning process, these two sub-disciplines, Feng Shui and like flying star combo, are usually not separated. Like, for example, the Feng Shui TV shows or the social media posts we see in Taiwan, usually like on the TV show, they will invite guests that are expert in Feng Shui, one guest expert in astrology, and another guest maybe expert in fortune telling. So they will have a conversation, and the knowledge we learn is, you know, kind of mixed together. It's not independent from each other. And so to us, like Feng Shui is kind of like a intuition, you know, intuitive experience. So when we are trying to describe the position or direction, we don't really distinguish like Feng Shui from astrology. So my point is that maybe it depends on different cultures. And also, like in my experience, like those Feng Shui consultations that underwent formal training in Taiwan, when they visit a client's house, they tend not to, you know, use really technical language. For example, distinguish like Feng Shui is outside, astrology is inside the house. They don't do such thing. They usually just, you know, kind of use some more common people language to convince their clients that, oh, this thing will be good for your health, your wealth. Yeah, they focus more on the effects. But I understand that maybe, you know, trying to understand the rules or the origins of these practices is important. Yeah, I understand that.
Cheng-Yen, that was really very interesting. It's fascinating. Thank you for sharing your home and your mother's love of Feng Shui. We'd love to have seen a picture of your mum, actually. Beautiful. But I don't know whether we've got any burning questions. We do need to move on to our last presentation.
Okay. Yeah.
Yan, do you want to share anything? Unmute yourself.
Not really. So unless there are any questions, we can move forward.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much for that. That was great. We really feel we've had a little trip to Taiwan, learning about where you live and the culture and the approach to Feng Shui. So thank you for that. It was great. And thank you for joining
Thank
us
you.
from Toronto. And please stay on if you choose to. But
Yeah.
thank you. I will now get ready to introduce Alex, Spotlight, and Victoria. Let me find Victoria's one as well. Gallery. Where are we? There we go. Okay, coming. Takes me a while to take my. Wonderful. So now we have our last presentation. So folks, thank you for sticking with us for the day. This is great. And our session now is Feng Shui remedies at work. This is good, isn't it?
Right. Hello.
Alexandra Berteau and Victoria Michaelides are both long-time members of the Feng Shui Society, currently serving on the executive committee, which we're very grateful to have you as part of the team. And as well as their Feng Shui knowledge and the school that they run together, they have a wide and deep practice of natural and healing arts, which I'm sure they'll explain to you. Nutrition, coaching, naturopathy, biofeedback. So a whole wealth of those that you're bringing together into a wonderful potpourri. So I'm going to hand over to you two for our last session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gina. Hi, everyone. We'll start by sharing our presentation. Victoria, are you sharing or I'm sharing?
Yes, I'm sharing now.
All right.
There we go. Please let me know if that works, doesn't it? Yes, there we go.
Okay.
And thanks, Gina.
Okay, so that's us. And today, Victoria and I are going to talk about Feng Shui cures within your internal environment. Can we? Yes. So as you already may know, the solar year starts on February 4th every year, which is a time when we implement our cures. And if you haven't done it yet, it's never too late. We're going to go through a few of our ideas of what we do and what we use to enhance spaces or smooth areas. And before we start, I'd like to mention and remind that there are 3 dimensions to the practice of Feng Shui. And the first one is space Feng Shui, which also in our previous presentation we talked about. It has to do with our environment, what's in our landscape, what's just outside our door, behind our property. It has a great influence for the people living inside a place. The time Feng Shui has to do with when was our property or office was built, and the people Feng Shui has to do with the residents of a place. So the influence that they have within their environment. So another layer in this is the annual stars. Every year they fly throughout a property and they're called the flying stars. They do affect us in a positive way and then in a more challenging manner. Today we're going to focus on interior cures mostly. And what is important, we like to do things that are goal-oriented and give fast results so we can achieve what we intend to. Next. So assuming you have a floor plan of your property or your office, mostly your home, the important areas first is knowing what is the orientation of your home, which means is it facing north, is it facing south, northeast, what degrees on the compass. So once you identify that, the important areas of your internal environment is the facing, we just said, the main door, where is it located, the bedroom where you sleep, because on an average 24 hours day, we spend at least, I would say 7 hours perhaps in our bedroom. So it's quite an important part of our life, the kitchen and the office. That's one. And then, of course, the aim of applying Feng Shui principles is that we want an environment that confers the yin and the yang environment, which, you know, we want to harmonize, bring a balance. And balance in a bedroom might not be the same balance as in a living room. For example, in a bedroom, we want the bedroom to be more yin and the living room more yang, more bright by nature, by the environment. So what is important is to put yourself in the best sectors. That's what we want to see, and we're going to see how to do that. In this presentation, we're going to focus on the flying stars and the Bagua map. So, take into consideration the location and the direction. Then next, yes, the Bagua map of your home. What does it mean? Every cardinal and or every direction, southeast, south, southwest, etc., is related to an element. So, for example, if we take the southeast, and let's assume that your office is in the southeast, we do want to put a symbol that represents that area. So the southeast, we know it's related to the wood element. So definitely would like to put an element that represents the wood, such as a bamboo or some plants, even rectangular shapes, because the wood is represented by rectangular shapes. Just to make, to represent the idea of growth, because the southeast represent prosperity. So that's one thing. And again, we want to bring in harmony. So we want, in each corner, we want to be surrounded by all the elements. And in particular, the one that it's related to. So for this year, in 2023, you can see that the flying stars, each star falls in a specific sector. So we have typically the lucky stars, what we call the auspicious stars, and then the more challenging stars. I suppose we all know them. The auspicious stars would be 1, 6, 8, and the enhancer, which is 9, and the more challenging ones will be the 5 and the 2, mostly. Now, moving to the next slide. Yes, talking about the challenging stars, because that's where we're going to put our cures, right? There are 3 main annual afflictions. So the one being 2023 being the rabbit year, we know the Grand Duke's location is in the east. And what does it mean is that we don't want to be facing that direction, meaning the Grand Duke, for fear of conflict maybe within our lives, or things not really flowing the way we want. So this is the Feng Shui principle, not to face that direction. We can back that direction, which is a sign of support. Then we get the support of the Grand Duke, and overall to keep that area discreet. So meaning no noise, no excavation, no renovation. Overall, that's what it means. And then the other 2 main afflictions is the opposite location of the rabbit, which is the rooster, being in the west. So it's called the Sui Po location. And in this direction, this sector as well, we don't want to spend so much time or making noise, disturb that area, basically. That's what it means. And the other affliction is called the 3 killings, or the Sansha. No, it sounds dramatic, but it just means that you want to keep that area quiet, really. Again, no drilling, no renovation. You can listen to music, but not heavy music or loud music, something that is in the quiet tones. And you might experience, if you have in your astrology the monkey and the dog rooster, that if you are in those areas, you might be more affected. Now, what can we do about it? That's where we come. Yeah, so again, I just talked about numbers, but a number by itself means nothing. We have to compare it to something else to give it value. Otherwise, we get scared for no reason. again, as I mentioned earlier, typically the auspicious stars are 1, 6, 8, and 9, and they relate to career, to success, to financial gains, and in more generally, happy moments. And the next lucky star is the number 4, which relates to academic success and also peach blossoms. So it's an attraction star or energy. Now let's take an example. What if the number 9, which is an enhancing energy, falls in a sector with a permanent number 5, right? Which is a 5 yellow, it's an affliction number, and it's located in the Northwest. Right, and the Northwest is the sector which attracts mentors and helpful people. So does it mean that you won't meet mentors and helpful people that year because the number 5 falls there? It's not so straightforward. And what I'm trying to say is maybe we shouldn't be scared of that number. Also, it depends on your own GWA number and other relative, the flying stars, what other numbers fall in, what's in the landscape, the external environment, what's in that sector, for example. And again, sometimes there are no cures. Sometimes we have to leave it as it is, and it will be fine. It's one-on-one case. We cannot generalize. Now, another example. What if one person belongs to GWA 2, which belongs to the earth element, and sleeps in the sector with a permanent star 5? Now, I've had this example with one of my daughters in a previous home. She did sleep in an area with a permanent 5, and she's a GWA 2. And I have to say, I didn't put any cures there, and she was fine. What I did is perhaps I did some space clearing and made sure that the area was decluttered. But all these years she was fine. So I want to take that prejudice away from you. We have to look at it case by case. Next. All right. So how do we activate our cures? What can we do? So number 1, through activity. So in a sector where we have afflicting stars, you can throw a party, for example, not afflicting stars, even enhancer, even the good stars. If you have a 1 or a 9 or a 6, it could be that you want to raise the volume in that area and throw a party, bring in the yang energy. Another way of activating a cure is through bright lights. So if, let's say, your living room doesn't have enough of natural light, then you have to bring in perhaps mirrors or more lights into the area just to add in that energy of bright yang energy. With the sound, you can activate the area with turning on the TV, playing the music, and other ways of bringing the sound into your environment. You can use also the elements, the 5 elements, to enhance an area. So if you need more wood, for example, you'll place symbolic rectangular objects, art that have rectangular shapes. You can place, obviously, plants. You can even place anything that represent nature. And symbols. So symbols, for example, in the previous presentation, again, we talked about the Hokshu, or some traditional Chinese way of adding cures. So it could be that calabash, or if you come from the Mediterranean, of Middle Eastern, maybe you believe in the evil eye. So, that's another way of warding off a negative energy in your sector. Now, again, talking about the flying stars for 2023. Again, first we said a number by itself means nothing. And two, why do you want to put cures? What are you trying to achieve, right? Because without intent, without purpose, what's the point of adding cures? You have to know what you want, have an objective before applying anything in life, really. So is it that you want to improve your relationships? Is it that you need guidance in your career? Is it that you need more mental help or something? Your health, you want to improve your health. So the flying stars and the sectors where you can spend time, the combination of the two can help you. You can use those qualities, those tools to increase your luck. So, you can use, let's say this year we have number 8 in the South. This is a good place to spend if you want to increase your wealth, for example, or stay in the center if you want your academic sector, you want to do some breakthrough there. Even for the romance sector. Where is the helpful people sector? Is the Northwest. And as we mentioned earlier, there is this 5 yellow in the Northwest. So then we'll have to discuss on a one-by-one case to see what we can do about it, because it could be that your external environment does not affect this the internal sector of the Northwest. Now, yes, let's talk about the 5 yellow flying stars, because I guess it's a biggie among many people. So as I said earlier on, every 4th of February, we have new stars falling into our indoor environment. And this year, the 5 falls in the Northwest. So this sector, the Northwest, is associated with leadership, with mentorship, with helpful people. And with the leader, the breadwinner of the house. So it is important that that this place is really taken care of, especially for the person who brings in the money. So if the 5 is there, maybe it just means that this year you just keep that area quiet, instead of don't make your important phone calls from this area. Go to the south or go to the north, for example. And what does it mean also for the number 5? We're moving from next year, we're moving to period 9, which is related to the fire element. So fire feeding the earth, which 5 belongs to the earth element, is not auspicious. So we have to be conscientious about this. So yes, later on we'll talk more about the cures, but one of the solutions will be to use wind chimes in that area, to represent the metallic element. And it's recommended that you keep that area quiet and avoid any work, any noisy activities. And again, don't panic, if an important place, you spend a lot of time in the Northwest and you cannot move anywhere else. What you need to do for this year is really make your important phone call somewhere else. Just keep that area quiet, and it should be fine. And keep the lights dimmed as well. So just remember that it's a Zen. It should be a Zen area for this year. Victoria, you want to take over from here, I think.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alexandra. That was really helpful. It was really interesting. And for everyone listening, as you can see, both of us are classical Feng Shui practitioners. That's what we practice. But it doesn't mean that we don't blend it with other modalities, other modern modalities. So essentially what's important is when both myself and Alexandra started working together, one of the things that fascinated both of us was the amount of knowledge or information about cures in books, and when you would attend different presentations by different masters or grandmasters, the variety of cures that was said to have to be used in order to cure or remedy even, or neutralize. There's so many words to describe it, different elements. So I think that's what is really fascinating for me, because we wanted to see actually what works. Because if we look at Feng Shui, and I think Yang mentioned earlier in his survey, there was a very low interest in knowing about the history on Feng Shui in order to be a good practitioner. But actually, symbolism and Feng Shui is beyond something mechanic here. And so the history of Feng Shui is so relevant in understanding the mindset of the Chinese community and where it all comes from before we can apply it within our modern spheres, basically. And so what I wanted to talk about is the yellow 5, which Alexandra refers to, and the yellow 5 being something that in Chinese culture being the doom and gloom of all mishaps. And I say that now with Alexandra, we sometimes giggle because of the language that is used, which puts fear into people, and that's something we really want to debunk. And again, so for the cures that we've used personally in our practices, and for myself, because I come from a background where I like to look at facts and I don't like to test them out, and I like to be results driven, so I need evidence. I've used wind chimes for the yellow 5, the 5 yellow even, and I personally use the 6 rods, the 6, as you can see, hollow rods themselves. And that's something which I learned from Grandmaster Lowe. And so when I use them for my clients, I've monitored to see after 3 months, how has it worked for them, then after 6 months, then after 12 months to see if there's been any improvement. I've compared them to those rods, to the wind chimes, which have bells on them and have ringing bells. Now I find that they are much better than the wooden bells, because it's the sound of the actual chimes from the metallic sounds that actually moves the chi that's stagnated there. So that's something that I'm very much into. And so I have the power of 6 again. So why I say 6, because the wind chimes that have the 6 rods and which are hollow, 6 representing the trigram of the Father, the heaven, here plays well into the wind chimes, because again, the metal element really kind of diffusing, neutralizing, depleting that kind of stagnated earth element there for the 5. Also, other grandmasters who I've studied with, they use the 6 coins, which is tied up with the red string. And it's interesting again, because number 6 again represents the metal element. You all know the round shape of the coins represent the metal 6, again, the heaven, the Heavenly Father. And so the red string itself is really interesting. Not only is it practical because it ties up the 6 coins and makes sure they're all together, they don't come loose, but also red, not only is it just an auspicious color in Chinese, but it activates the actual remedy of the 6 coins. It represents life. It is yang, it represents blood, it represents human on earth. And that's why we found that these objects work. But there are caveats to all of these, and I will come back to that at the end of the presentation. Next, again, saltwater cure. I personally, saltwater cure is one of my favorite. Some people place the 6 Chinese traditional coins within the saltwater cure. Obviously, the saltwater cure needs to have a good measurement, and I use coarse salt, which we'll get onto. It has to be coarse salt, and you have to ensure that the water is not so much that actually you've got a bed of water and just a little bit of salt at the bottom of the pot or with a glass you're using. And the actual coins have to be visible. That's really, really important. So if you're using the saltwater cure and the coins are sat at the bottom of this vase or whatever container you put this in, they're not going to work. They're not really going to crystallize. So we're actually getting the dilution right, but the measurements right is really, really important. And this can also be used for the star 2, which Alexandra alluded to earlier. And star 2 is all about the health. It's about health matters, and just being mindful around how you look after yourself a little bit better in that particular sector of your home, or when the annual energy comes in, so that's really important. So the only thing with a salt cure that I found is that I tend not to place it in a bedroom, because water itself is yang. If it's still water, it's alive, it's living, those molecules are living. So whilst you feel that you're going to be curing or remedying a star number 2 in a particular area of the house, if that person is sleeping there in the bedroom, they might have disturbed sleep, and it kind of it counters that kind of beneficial neutralization that you're trying to do with this remedy. But also, saltwater cure is the most purest form of a purifier, actually. You can literally use salt and water and with a little cloth and dab it in water, dab your cloth in water, and just kind of cleanse your home with it and cleanse any of your previous remedies with it, because they are usable. So we're practical here. You don't need to necessarily chuck away anything you've used if you want to, fine, but being practical, if you want to use salt water to cleanse your old cure, is perfectly fine and reusable. Now, going back to the salt, I've said salt water, coarse salt is what should be used. That's how it's effective. And why I talk about the red ribbon here, or the red sticker, again, the red ribbon or the redness or a red string, just like the red string around the 6 coins, is important. Everything in Feng Shui is symbolic. Even the remedies that we are using are symbolic. They mean something. This is why we use them, to neutralize the energy of what's coming in. So if we believe in Feng Shui, we believe in the energies of the universe, we believe in particular undesirable and auspicious energy, then we also believe in the symbolism in order to remedy that particular undesirable energy that we don't want in the home or in the office. So personally, for me, the salt cure works. However, that little touch of using that red ribbon or that red string or that red sticker gives it that extra oomph, and it becomes even more powerful. Next, again, traditional Chinese, it's really good to go back to the history as to why a calabash is being used, or a calabash is used in some homes in terms of remedying that health star number 2. And that calabash, actually, the story goes that all the traditional Chinese medical doctors used to actually put their little herbs or their liquids or their potions, which they would give to their patients, in that little calabash, and used to carry it around with them. And it was often hung up, or herbs were dried inside it. And again, that little red string tied around it, given that symbolism around something becoming alive and activated, very similar into Feng Shui, classical Feng Shui. You have the home, you know what period it's been born in or built in, the roof's been put on, but unless there is life in there, a human being walks in there and lives in there, the Qi is not activated. So that redness represents the blood in human form of a human being. Clocks are really interesting. In Chinese culture, clocks mean so many different things. They can have a negative connotation as well as a positive connotation. So, but clocks are really important in terms of cures for even the 5 again and the 2. And you see, I focus on those 2 because those 2 numbers, those 2 stars, seem to be the ones that are people are focused on, are zoomed in, and very concerned with unnecessarily, because it's commercialized to buy things in order to remedy them. But if you've got a clock at home, it could be a modern one, it could be an old-fashioned one, as long as it's got the metallic pendulum, those metallic sounds, what it does, it moves the stagnated Qi. It soothes the tension in that area of the house. And as long as you can hear the sound, it has to be audible. You should be able to hear it in the home, that ticking sound. Then that's what it does. It soothes that tension, moves the stagnation of that Qi in that area. Music, of course, music, and especially the piano, again, good for those particular stars. The sound of music, and I think Tanya mentioned earlier on, and Christian as well, that the frequency of the harmonics are so important in breaking some of those energies that are stagnated in the room. It's very important, and it's about those metallic strings in the piano that really makes a difference, because the piano really projects those frequencies. But what's important here when we use music is that one of my really good Feng Shui masters, actually from the Feng Shui Research Center, and they collect a lot of data on the Joseph Yu. I remember her, she placed her hi-fi specifically in the center one year when the Grand Duke was, and I say hi-fi, so you know how long ago that was. And she played some classical music. Fine, the music was really soothing, we loved it, really great. But within about four days, the hi-fi system actually stopped working. It's no such thing as coincidences. It's just that we tried it again with a couple of more of our students amongst us, placing the actual hi-fi, the actual music in that particular degree of where the Grand Duke is, actually irritates the Grand Duke energy. So you kind of place the music, or you play the music just outside of that particular degree, so not to disturb it directly, and that's what seems to work. So we'll probably take some questions on that. And so mirrors are really, really interesting. Mirrors go back. Are they a Feng Shui cure? Are they not a Feng Shui cure? Is a Bagua related to this? Is a Pakwa related to this? Mirrors are kind of used in Feng Shui, but they kind of come from a very kind of mysticism, spiritual essence, which Feng Shui also is linked to. So a lot of masters who I have studied with and I've learned from, they use a convex mirror to deflect qi, to deflect negative sha qi that they don't want. The concave mirror, which magnifies the qi, is great, because if you've got good energy in that sector, and again, it depends on what flying stars are there, any permanent energy stars are there in your home, it really enhances that good energy. And it's particularly useful if you've got a missing sector of your home. So for example, if you've got a south missing from your home, and the south is important, represents joy, and there's only one south and there's only one north. So if you've got south and north missing in your home, those sectors missing, there is something that you need to do in order to make sure that energy is filled in. So that mirror can be used in order to double up that energy, kind of if you position it in the right place, it enhances that corner and it gives the impression that there is that sector which is not missing. But Feng Shui is very physical. It has formulas, and formulas need to be adhered to. You can't make up your own thing and then realize why something works just a little bit. Formulas need to be followed. It's tradition for a reason. You bring it into modern day living, but changing the formulas from one thing to another has to be considered, because you won't get that desired effect. So images, I love art and images in Feng Shui. I think they have, again, a form of symbolism, but really influence the atmosphere. And I particularly took from Carol when she did a presentation last year, and how symbolic ships and shipwrecks, for example. Now, to one person, a shipwreck might mean something. It might be beautiful and it might bring peace and calm to them emotionally, physically, what we think and what we feel. It makes them feel better. To another person, again, going back to the geography of thought and mind, it might represent something totally different. And so, of course, you spend time and invest time in choosing the photo, the pictures, any objects or art, which makes you feel good. That picture or whatever you choose may not make you feel good in 5 years' time, but it does now. And that's what is significant and important. But there is a but. Any picture, any form of artwork, any form school, which people here will understand, anything in form has a symbolism. So that is attracted into your life. So of course, we give consideration to what is being used and placed in our homes. And so I've got the power of red over metal. When we've got too much metal, but metal is auspicious, of course. Metal in classical Chinese is auspicious, because actually in classical Chinese, it is metal that is the wealth element and not water. Water activates it. So, but of course, if you're dealing with flying stars, for example, number 6 and 7, for example, number 7 interpretation, classical feng shui being scandal or robbery, along those lines, those wordings which seem to be quite extreme, we treat that metal element with a fire element. And that fire element can come in terms of an orange or red bright light, a lampshade, something more modern than this, if you like. And traditionally, in Taiwan or China, Singapore, they also use a red packet lycee, or the hanpao envelope used for, you know, New Year celebrations or other celebrations. But the trick here with this packet, obviously, these cures have to be visible. And that goes the same with those 6 coins. And obviously a wind chime, you're going to be able to see if you hang it. But even with the 6 coins, which I talked about earlier on, to address the star 5 and the 2, some people tend to hide it underneath their mattress, or they hide it somewhere so their house doesn't look like it's feng shui. She needs to recognize those symbols. We're working in the symbolic area here. So it needs to be visible or it doesn't work. So next, bamboo. And I love the bamboo. The bamboo is economical and it's very woven into Chinese culture. And it's 3 long stem bamboos in a clear vase really are there to remedy the star quality number 3, which is at the moment in the southeast of the home. And it kind of represents miscommunications. Some refer to it as quarrels and arguments, but it causes tensions and miscommunication. There's a lot of misunderstanding. I find that if you use 3 long stem bamboo, they have to be long stems. So at least my hand, this is the minimum length it should be in a clear vase, and obviously with fresh water. Now, it's the 3 long stems which represent the yang number 3. And that's used for the number 7 and 6, because number 7 is a metal element. And obviously we are depleting it, we are draining the number 7. So when you've got a yang 3, which is an odd number, it kind of works really well as a cure for the 7. So that's what seems to work really, really well for clients. Okay, and I think we're almost there. So lastly, I think plants are beautiful. We all love plants and flowers. Obviously, this lovely creativity element. It's yang, it creates a yang atmosphere. It addresses the protruding corners, as we know. And it actually does really well, again, for the star 5 and 2, especially if you have the star 5 and 2 in a southeast or east sector, which are both wood sectors from a parcours perspective, then it does really, really well. So you'll find that when energy number 5 goes into those particular sectors, east and southeast, it's less influential. But as you can see, these growth elements are absolutely wonderful to have these plants in your home. So I guess just to end here, just some tips on 10 tips for feng shui remedies. What's really important is we were never taught, when we were taught about the remedies, the classical feng shui, but actually for you to place your remedies, you need to use date selection, because if we are working with energy and we're saying we're looking at astrology and astronomy and we're believing this and we believe that those energies of the universe create this within your home, then we must also believe that each day has its own energy. And so particular days are successful days or not successful days for any individual, depending on your astrology chart, and especially when you want to place the cures. So your cures are going to be more effective when you place them on a particular day and a particular hour. That's when they work. Also, I place the cures for the 5 and 2 on metal days specifically. I choose the day when it's a metal yang day. Doesn't matter if it's a yin day either, but it's going to be on an auspicious day. So we were never taught that when we were taught classical feng shui, but you learn and we develop. Also, the accuracy of placement. So we're not only do we place the cures just in the southeast sector anywhere because it's the There's a 5 there, for example, but find the actual degree, the exact degree where you should be placing your cure. Everything is about accuracy now. And so again, the remedies have to be naked and visible to the naked eye. You have to be able to see it, or it doesn't work. So, and the quality of the remedy is is key in the cure. So I dare say, the better the quality and the standard of the metal, the more you're appeasing particular chi and the grand dupe. You're appeasing here, you're neutralizing. So you've got to appease in some way. And so you monitor and review how it works. Earlier on, we talked about, somebody mentioned, one of our colleagues mentioned that, you know, you can't just do a Feng Shui consultation and, let your client be on their way and not monitor what's happening in their lives. We are responsible as consultants to see that what we are doing works. Because if we carry on doing something that doesn't work, then that's not very ethical. And so we have to also be brave to make adjustments. If we've made mistakes or something doesn't work, you have to be able to address that. You tell the client, you have to be able to work with the client. And most importantly, you have to create places like, for example, the forums here, what we do here, to share our experiences, what works, especially what doesn't work. Because from my experience, a lot of cures or remedies do not work. And they don't work for a reason. You have to be extremely accurate in what you're doing. You have to keep developing yourself. There must be reasons why something doesn't work. Okay, and so sharing our experiences here is really, really important. So I think this is my presentation. I am here. Myself and Alexandra are here to take any questions. Thank you.
Oh, lovely, Victoria and Alex, thank you. Do you want to just share contact details for people if they want that?
Yeah, if you scroll down.
With your email or your website that we can add, you've got that.
Yeah, sorry. There, here we go. And some credit to some of the photos we use as well.
Yeah, and if you want, people want to take a screenshot of that, then we could take that screen down and we can see if we have any questions. Want to open up the page? Wonderful, wonderful. A lot of detail there. We've had a very rich day, is what I would say. Let's see what comments we have from people. Do you want to just stop the screen share? Wonderful. And then I've got you both spotlit. And then let's see if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question. Anything there that's struck home for you? Or are you all reeling with information?
Oh dear. Or any feedback? We scared everyone.
I think we, well, we've given people a lot to think about. Yeah. Yeah, quite warm myself. It's hot outside. Okay. Anybody want to put anything in the chat? And we have a very shy community.
I'll talk. So it was very interesting to see the whole all the speakers, and I kind of see two kind of themes going through the presentation, kind of belief-based Feng Shui, where you have to see the remedy for it to work, but also kind of evidence-based Feng Shui, where Tanya talked about electromagnetics. You don't have to see electricity to know that it works, and whether you believe in it or not, it will damage your life if you touch a wire. But it doesn't mean that belief-based Feng Shui doesn't work, because we know the placebo effect works. Whatever works, works. So, and Cheng talked about his mother, using Feng Shui in a kind of broad way, and it works for her. And she was very good at kind of reframing even things that were kind of negative and just seeing the positive side. And that's beautiful that we have kind of different perspectives on the whole subject, where you can merge both sort of views of how things work.
We've had a day of different perspectives, haven't we? It's been interesting.
I do have one question for the ladies. You talk about the timing for cures, Victoria, which really hit home. So was it your example? I just wonder how you can do the calculations, and it's not something I do, But have you kind of compared that to intuition and feeling? Because I would just do something when it feels right and put a cure at the time it feels right, like perhaps not at midnight, you know, but like 4 a.m. But have you kind of correlated the two and found that intuition equals the calculation?
When you first begin, some people have it naturally, some people are naturally intuitive, and that's absolutely fine. And they can place the cures if you're lucky. Some people say, some grandmasters said, if you're lucky, you end up doing things at the right time, the right place anyway. But I think for me, what's important is understanding the formulas is really important, because I can't always rely on my intuition. I may be out of balance, so I have to do things like qigong, things that when I'm in the right place, it means I can be better and serve excellent service for my clients. So intuitively, I do believe in intuitive feng shui, but I also blend that with the formula. And something that I want to say, Tanya, is really interesting. I love the EMF stuff. I love all of this stuff, because we have to be really careful. You can't tell somebody to move based on feng shui and bazi, and if they're going to be sleeping on geopathic stress lines. It's really important that you have the right equipment, the right techniques, but you blend the two. This is, and you see feng shui practitioners do this all the time. They're asking people to move to certain locations when actually they don't know what's going on in that particular bedroom. So yeah.
And then, if I may add to this question, Christian, because you're a healer, I am too. I think when you are in the healing world, you also ask for permission before doing something, and you are attuned. So in that way, you can obviously perhaps you do it intuitively because you are connected.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned in my talk about Chronos and Kairos time, and I'm sure, Christian, you can appreciate with your group.
Yeah.
Basically, obviously, we need both, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't have Chronos time. You know, we wouldn't synchronize ourselves. To go beyond past, present, future to kind of now, as you were talking earlier, and you can do those remedies anytime you kind of connect it or congruent, and still works. So both are valid ways of doing, and people can choose the one that works for them, basically.
This is the thing. There's more than one valid way. And the more in tune we are with our own energy and space and get ourselves in the right zone, then whatever's appropriate comes to us. It's trusting ourselves, isn't it? It's trusting ourselves, and often we can unearth knowledge that we'd forgotten we had. I think somebody mentioned that before, about in that moment, something comes to us, and it's like driving a car. I don't know whether anybody remembers learning how to drive a car and having to work out about the accelerator and the brake, and it was all very complicated. Then you get to the point where you just drive. You've got no idea, your hands and feet, your eyes, they know exactly what they're doing. And that's the journey, isn't it? Getting to that place of confidence and competence with all the things that we learn. I'm going to go back to the gallery view and just see if anybody else has a question, comment before we move to our close. Have you all had a good day? Give us a hand if you've had a good day. Great, wonderful. It's been content rich, hasn't it?
Yes.
And have we learned from sharing with each other?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a good space, isn't it? So we learned, we've been across the globe today, and thank you for joining us from Toronto. And also I appreciate, language. This has all been spoken in English, not everybody's first language. I appreciate everybody's input. Any final comments before I close? Or thoughts, requests? Do we have another day like this? It's good. It's not a whole day. It's not like we're here from 9 till 5. That's a bit of a drain, isn't it? I think late morning or mid-morning until early afternoon is enough to take in. I don't know, what do we have, 5 presentations? And it's good to have the space to discuss things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the breakout rooms?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you all got at least one thing you're taking away to add to your practice?
absolutely.
Yeah, if you think what it is, put it in the chat, because the chat's actually been a great resource today. A lot of links, a lot of comments, and if there's something you're taking away for your own home, your own office, your own desk, your life, your practice with clients, you know, if there's one thing you're taking away, maybe just reflect and then put that in the chat.
Somebody actually calculated the number of ways of washing dishes. So over 200 ways of washing dishes. And some people use a dishwasher. That's a shortcut.
That's a hack, isn't it? Use a dishwasher. Are you telling me that in the 200, the dishwasher is not included?
It was included.
There must be 200 ways of stacking a dishwasher.
I love dishwashing because it's grounding, you know. I'm connected to the water, the earthing element, you know.
Yeah, well.
I do have a dishwasher as well.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say thank you for this day. It's my first time encounter with you guys, and I felt very comfortable and learned a lot. And thank you.
You are so welcome. And you joined us from Germany, didn't you?
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to say here we are just before 2:45. We've had a grand day out. Jan, thank you. The shortcuts. It makes you even, you know, it makes you think. It makes your brain think differently when you think like that. We learned a lot about electromagnetic EMS. EMS from Tanya, thank you. Chung Yang joining us from Toronto, thank you so much for that insight into the geographic layouts and your own home. That's brilliant. And then Alex and Victoria, thank you. That was fantastic. And we all have the opportunity of watching this again, because each presentation was, as I say, content rich. It's a great resource for everybody who didn't show up on the day, but they missed the opportunity of discussing firsthand together. So just big thank you to our speakers, everybody else who showed up today. And we'll see you at the next one, and we'll let you know what we're doing in terms of our 30-year celebration. But actually, Jan, maybe you can suggest, I'd like it if people, somebody's just joining us now, but it's a little bit late. If people could share some thoughts, is there somewhere online where we could go? Do we have, what about our Facebook page?
Yes, yeah, so
Facebook, our Feng Shui Society Facebook page, we could put a picture up of the a posting of the of today's event. If you do that, Jan, and then we can invite you to just put your comments, feedback. That would be lovely. Wonderful. I'll let you all go now. Go and get yourself a cup of tea, piece of cake, or lunch or breakfast, whatever the next meal is. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Gina, thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.